Chapter 247. The next day. To be precise, Ling Shiqi didn't know what time it was because there was no day or night in the illusory spirit's secret realm. He could only judge from his hunger that it was already the next day. He habitually opened the system store, glanced at the goods on it, and shook his head and closed it. He had made a lot of money yesterday, and now he had more than 700 system coins in his pocket, but he didn't want to draw anymore. This was back to the old problem he had when he was still on Blood Mist Island. For the current Ling Shiqi, the ordinary intermediate prizes were no longer enough to satisfy him. It was possible to draw third-rank resources in the intermediate lottery, and it was also possible to draw fourth-rank resources. At this stage, there was no doubt that fourth-rank resources could improve Ling Shiqi, but the probability of drawing fourth-rank resources in the intermediate lottery was too low. In this way, it was better to pay more attention to the system store. Maybe he could find something he wanted. It was a pity that the 4 items that were refreshed today were all materials and sundries. After he left the previous mountain, he explored a few places and met many spirit cultivators. Most of those spirit cultivators found their own sect members and gathered together, so he could only stay away. As he walked, he came to a cliff where hundreds of spirit cultivators were gathered. However, the strange thing was that these people were not fighting for anything, but some of them were sitting cross-legged. The other people were whispering to each other. Ling Shiqi, who had planned to go around, couldn't help but walk over curiously. When he got closer, he saw a dreamy circle of light at the bottom of the cliff. In front of the circle of light, there was a stone tablet that was 2 feet tall, and lines of small words were engraved on the stone tablet. In front of the stone tablet, there were dozens of people sitting cross-legged. Ling Shiqi walked over and stood in the crowd, listening to their conversation. I wonder if any of these people can comprehend it. I don't think there's much hope. Since the opening of the illusory spirit's secret realm, it said that only one person obtained the inheritance of the cultivation method a few hundred years ago. Sigh, the person who set up this situation is too strict. It's better to just let people fight for it. If it's based on strength, you and I still have some hope. But if it's based on potential and comprehension ability, we are far inferior to those young people. That's right. Let's not talk about anything else. Just the Mountain Sea sects Bai Yi and the 1,000 illusionary sword sects Ozu are considered geniuses. I wonder if they will succeed. Hearing this, Ling Shiqi immediately remembered that Husonli had also mentioned to him that there was a place he had to go after entering the secret realm. It was this cliff. It was said that the halo at the bottom of the cliff contained the inheritance of the Divine Illusion Palace's cultivation method, but in order to obtain the inheritance, one had to pass a test. However, this test did not test one's strength, but one's talent and perception. The content of the test was engraved on the stone tablet. There was a nameless chant engraved on it, but the strange thing was that this chant could not be memorized. In other words, after you memorize it in your mind, you will lose this memory in an instant. If he couldn't remember it, how was he supposed to cultivate it? He didn't know. Since ancient times, there had only been one person who had comprehended this incantation and entered the circle of light to obtain the inheritance. Even so, every time the illusory spirit's secret realm opened, everyone who entered would come here to give it a try. What if they comprehended it? Ling Shiqi looked at the stone tablet with a burning gaze. He really wanted to go over and give it a try. He had unlimited skill points, so maybe he could directly learn the chant. However, he was not in a hurry to go forward. Instead, he planned to wait and see. He also realized that more than 70% of the cultivators here were at the early stage of the Spirit Pulse realm. Furthermore, they were all quite young. These people still had some hope in their hearts. As for those in the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm, they might as well go elsewhere to try their luck and not waste their time here. Gradually, those who were sitting cross-legged left one by one with sullen faces. It was obvious that they had all failed. Many of the people who had come to watch the show had also left. Only those who were still comprehending the chant were left. Among them, the largest number were undoubtedly from the Mountain Sea sect and the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. These people all looked at the two people with anticipation. These two people were naturally the most talented in entering the illusory spirit secret realm this time. Therefore, they were also the most hopeful. Ling Shiqi's gaze was also fixed on Bai Yi and Oziyu. However, he was also a little surprised that he didn't see anyone from the Tang family here. As a first-rate force in Donglin County, how could the Tang family give up such an opportunity? But without waiting for him to think too much, Oziyu, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly shone with a gorgeous seven-colored light. Then, he was wrapped up by the seven-colored light and left the ground, flying directly into the circle of light at the bottom of the cliff. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. A disciple of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect immediately shouted in surprise, "Junior brother O succeeded." He comprehended the nameless chant. An older spirit cultivator beside him laughed and said, "Ha, he is the second person in thousands of years to obtain the inheritance. Our sect is lucky." The people of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect were all happy. As for the local forces of Donglin County, their expressions were not so good. If a genius in Donglin County obtained the inheritance, they might be envious and jealous, but in the end, they would not let the fertile water flow into their own fields. But now, Oziyu of Pinghui County had obtained the inheritance. This was equivalent to slapping their faces. Especially the Mountain Sea sect, which was the leader of Donglin County, this meant that Oziyu was more talented than Bai Yi. At this moment, their expressions were the most unsightly. At this moment, Bai Yi also tidied up his clothes and walked back. The Mountain Sea sect immediately asked, "Junior brother Bai, how was it?" Bai Yi smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Actually, I already knew that I couldn't comprehend the nameless chant. I just wanted to see if Oziyu could comprehend it. It's fine. It's just a cultivation method inheritance. Our sect's supreme cultivation method might not be worse than this. Junior brother Bai, don't think too much." Bai Yi replied shyly, "It's fine. Thank you for your explanation, senior brother. Let's go first." Following that, the people of the Mountain Sea sect left like flowing water. At this time, there were not many people still sitting cross-legged in front of the stone tablet. They saw that Oziyu had entered and Bai Yi had given up. How could they still have the mood to comprehend the nameless formula? Thus, they all prepared to get up and leave. At this moment, a figure leisurely walked to the stone tablet and sat down cross-legged. Many people looked at that person with surprise and doubt. Who is this person? Which sect is he from? I don't know. Judging from his clothes, he seems to be a rogue cultivator. TSK, a rank 1 rogue cultivator dares to covet the cultivation method inheritance of the Divine Illusion Palace. He overestimates himself. I seem to have some impression of this person. He seems to be called Suichuyu. Suichuyu? I've never heard of him. His cultivation is only at the first level of the Spirit Pulse realm. It's impossible for him to compete for the Illusory Palace token. Either his strength is extraordinary, or he used other methods to obtain the Illusory Palace token. I think it's most likely the latter. So what if he's strong? The nameless chant tests talent. Look at him, he's at least 40 years old and only just entered the Spirit Pulse realm. It can be seen that his talent isn't that good. Who cares about him, let's go. When the others saw Ling Shiqi walk to the stone tablet, they all revealed looks of disdain. Rogue cultivators had always been very unbearable in the eyes of these spirit cultivator sections. Clearly, they did not think highly of Ling Shiqi. However, just as they were discussing animatedly, Ling Shiqi's body suddenly burst forth with a 7-colored light. Following that, he floated up like Oziyu and floated into the circle of light. Those who were saying that Ling Shiqi was overestimating himself were all stunned. Even if Ozu was a peerless genius, he still took a long time to comprehend it. How did Suichuyu comprehend it as soon as he sat down? What kind of terrifying comprehension ability did he have? What shocked everyone even more was that after Lang Shiqi entered the circle of light, the stone tablet actually collapsed with a loud bang. Chapter 248. In fact, when Lang Shiqi had just arrived in front of the stone tablet, a line of words that only he could see appeared in front of his eyes: discovered the cultivation method, divine fantasy spirit technique. Do you want to learn it? However, Lang Shiqi did not cultivate it immediately. Since there was a prompt from the system, it meant that he could cultivate it at any time. What he was a little concerned about was that there were a lot of people around him. There were people from the Mountain Sea sect, the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect, and dozens of other sections. Some of these people might be able to recognize his current identity. Therefore, he pretended to sit down cross-legged. He wanted to wait for most of the people to leave before cultivating the chant. However, he did not expect that when those people saw him sit down cross-legged, they began to point at him. It seemed that they would not leave in a short period of time. Lang Shiqi had no choice but to cultivate the chant, which was what happened just now. Of course, he did not know that the stone tablet would collapse after he entered the circle of light. After Lang Shiqi entered the circle of light, he arrived at a narrow space in a flash. This space was about a few hundred feet in size. There were 3 small rooms in front of him. The first room from left to right had been destroyed. The door of the second room was tightly shut, and only the door of the third room was open. Lang Shiqi's eyes flashed as he thought to himself, the first room should have been chosen by the person who obtained the inheritance hundreds of years ago. As for the second room, it must be Ozu. In other words, this inheritance is actually different. Now I have no choice but to go to the third room. However, Lang Shiqi was not in a hurry to go in. Instead, he first activated his supercilious eye to observe. The result was as he expected: supercilious eye could not see through anything here. Then, he stepped into the third room. The moment he entered the room, the door behind him automatically closed. Lang Shiqi looked around. This room was not big. There were a few dark red bookshelves around it. On them were ancient books of varying thickness. It seemed to be a study. He walked to a bookshelf, picked up a book, and flipped through it a few times. He was surprised to find that these books were all real. Didn't they say that there was a cultivation method inheritance here? Why were there so many books? Could it be that the cultivation technique was in these books? Lang Shiqi quickly flipped through the ancient books one by one. These books basically recorded strange stories, and they were all from 10,000 years ago. There was almost no value to them. Then, Lang Shiqi walked to the desk in the study. There were a few books on the desk, or rather, secret manuals. Lang Shiqi's eyes lit up. He picked up one of the books and a system prompt appeared in front of him. Discovered rank 3 spiritual skill soul scaring spell, learn it. Discovered the rank 3 spiritual skill, mind seizing technique. Learn it. Discovered rank 4 spiritual skill falling blossoms, learn it. Yes. Lang Shiqi was secretly delighted that he had cultivated 3 spiritual skills in succession, including a rank 4 spiritual skill. Furthermore, these 3 spiritual skills were all illusions. This was also a field that Lang Shiqi had never touched before. Just as he cultivated these 3 spiritual skills, a figure suddenly appeared on the chair behind the desk. This figure was a young man around 20 years old. He was wearing a colorful robe, but there was an ancient feeling between his eyebrows. Lang Shiqi's demonic aura immediately surged and a bloody glow appeared. He was activating the demonic beast blood pattern armor. The figure spoke, but his voice sounded abnormally old. He said softly, "Young man, don't panic." As soon as he spoke, the demonic aura and bloody glow on Ling Shiqi's body instantly disappeared without a trace. Ling Shiqi frowned as he looked at the figure. Although his face was still tense, his heart was already filled with horror. Since the other party called him young man, it meant that he saw through his disguise at a glance. The other party's words also meant that the other party knew Ling Shiqi's reaction. In other words, that figure wasn't an illusion left behind by something like a shadow recording stone. It was a real person with consciousness and a real existence. The figure then said, "Young man, your heart is not bad. I am the palace master of the five-god flowing light palace under the divine illusion palace, Zhu Shenlu. Since you can cultivate the entry chant of the divine illusion spirit art and comprehend a few illusions, it means that you are very suited to cultivate our sex cultivation method." Ling Shiqi heard this and understood. So there was a test in this room. The test was the 3 illusions. Presumably, if one learned the 3 illusions in a certain amount of time, this Zhu Shenlu would appear. Ling Shiqi had unknowingly passed the test. Thinking this, he respectfully said, "Junior Ling Shiqi greets Palace Master Zhu. Alright, I don't have much time. First, answer a question of mine." "Senior, please ask." "Junior will answer everything I know." Zhu Shenlu asked, "Does the divine illusion palace still exist?" Ling Shiqi was stunned for a moment. Then, he replied, "Palace Master Zhu, the divine illusion palace was destroyed 10,000 years ago." Zhu Shenlu's complexion constantly changed. Finally, he sighed and said, "This result is within my expectations. The Grand Palace Master really failed." Ling Shiqi didn't understand his words, but he silently noted them down. Zhu Shenlu sternly said, "Ling Shiqi, the current me is a wisp of wool left behind by my true self before he died. My purpose is to pass down the legacy of the Divine Illusion Palace." The Divine Illusion Palace's highest cultivation method, the Divine Illusion Spirit Art, is divided into 3 parts, and each part can be called a top cultivation method. The Divine Illusion Palace is also divided into 3 Great Illusion Palaces, each of which cultivates a part. My lineage cultivates the 5-god flowing light art. I can pass down this cultivation method to you, but you must swear a blood oath that you will bring the Divine Illusion Palace back to the world in the future. Are you willing? Ling Shiqi didn't hesitate at all. He loudly said, "Junior will do everything in my power to complete Palace Master Zhu's task." Very good. Zhu Shenlu lifted his hand and a blood-red light sank into Ling Shiqi's body. But, he didn't feel anything strange. Zhu Shenlu said, "The blood oath has already been imprinted on your soul. It will only be effective after you reach the boundary of unity with the world. If you fail to complete my task before you die, your soul will scatter and you will not enter the cycle of samsara." Ling Shiqi was startled as he heard this, but he honestly nodded. Zhu Shenlu pointed his finger again, and a 5-colored ray of light flashed. In Ling Shiqi's mental illusion world, a huge illusion word suddenly appeared. Zhu Shenlu said, "I have sealed the 5-god flowing light art in your mental space. Every time you break through a realm, a part of the seal will be undone and you will obtain the next level of the cultivation method. Next, I will guide you in the first level, but you will have to rely on yourself for the rest." Chapter 249. Several hours later, Ling Shiqi finally cultivated the first level of the 5-god flowing light art to the rudimentary level. This time, he did not use the system but relied on his own understanding and Zhu Shenlu's guidance. Zhu Shenlu praised Ling Shiqi endlessly, saying that his talent was exceptional. Actually, the main reason was that his mental force was strong enough and for some reason, he seemed to have a high affinity for illusion-type techniques. He guessed that it might be related to the mental illusion world. He always thought that the mental illusion world was an upgraded version of the mental space, but now it seemed that it was not that simple. At this time, Zhu Shenlu's figure was a lot fainter than before. He said, since everything is over, I should return to the cycle of reincarnation. Ling Shiqi bowed deeply and said, Junior will remember Senior's great kindness. If I have the ability in the future, I will definitely rebuild the Divine Illusion Palace. Zhu Shenliu's figure became fainter and fainter until all that was left was a blurry multicolored light. However, a sentence was still transmitted out, one day, we may meet again. However, we may not know each other anymore. With that, Zhu Shenliu completely disappeared. Ling Shiqi's heart was filled with mixed feelings. This time, he used unlimited skill points to easily complete the 2 tests of obtaining the inheritance. It could be said that the process was abnormally smooth. It was reasonable to say that he should be overjoyed. However, obtaining the inheritance too easily made him feel that it was unreal. This was similar to the feeling Gu San and Yu Shu had when they were still on Blood Mist Island and he helped them occupy an area. Additionally, Zhu Shenliu's request was like a mountain pressing down on his heart. Rebuild the Divine Illusion Palace. Easier said than done. However, he had the blood oath that Zhu Shenliu had engraved in his body. Unless he wanted his soul to scatter, he had to complete this. Fortunately, Zhu Shenliu was quite understanding. Only when he reached unity of heaven and man realm would the blood oath take effect. Ling Shiqi shook his head and said, forget it, I'm too far away from unity of heaven and man realm. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Then, Ling Shiqi pushed open the door and walked out. Coincidentally, Oziu had also just come out. Oziu was a very good-looking youth. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was romantic and elegant. Especially a man with a pair of phoenix eyes, who knew how many girls would be charmed by him. The 2 of them looked at each other and their eyes flickered with various emotions. They were both guessing what the other party had obtained in the room. However, they tacitly agreed not to ask. Ling Shiqi secretly guessed, Oziu is the leader of this generation of the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect, and the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect is a sect that dabbles in illusions. It's reasonable for him to be able to obtain the inheritance. Oziu's eyes flashed with surprise. Firstly, he didn't expect someone to come in behind him. Secondly, he didn't expect this person to be a rogue cultivator. A rogue cultivator who wasn't young. Just as they were having their own thoughts, all of a sudden, the small space began to shake violently. Ling Shiqi and Oziu reacted very quickly. Without saying a word, they immediately rushed towards the circle of light. Fortunately, they were very close and entered the circle of light in a few breaths. Outside the circle of light, there were still dozens of people guarding it. Among them, more than a dozen were dressed in white robes and carrying long swords on their backs. They were all from the Thousand Illusions Sword Sect. As for the others, they were basically people from second-rate and third-rate sections. Among them, there were 3 people from the Heavenly Cloud Tower. They were all waiting for Ling Shiqi and Oziu to come out, but their respective goals were different. At this moment, the circle of light suddenly twisted, and 2 figures jumped out from it. It was Ling Shiqi and Oziu. Seeing Oziu come out, the dozen or so people from the Thousand Illusions Sword Sect immediately went up to him. They were all overjoyed, but they didn't ask anything. They vaguely surrounded Oziu in the middle, and a few of them looked at Ling Shiqi meaningfully. Ling Shiqi immediately felt that something was wrong. Oziu's mouth moved, but his voice was too soft. Ling Shiqi didn't hear what he said. But then the people from the Thousand Illusions Sword Sect left in a hurry. The Thousand Illusions Sword Sect had already made a lot of money on this trip. Now, their main goal was to bring Oziu back to the sect safely. The people from the Thousand Illusions Sword Sect left, but there were still 40 to 50 people left. They slowly approached Ling Shiqi in groups of 3 to 5. They all knew that Oziu and Ling Shiqi had both obtained the inheritance inside. Moreover, the stone tablet had already collapsed, so no one would be able to obtain the inheritance in the future. In other words, Ozu and Ling Shiqi were living inheritances. Ozu was a disciple of the top force, the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. They didn't dare to touch him, nor did they have the ability to do so. But Ling Shiqi was different. His current identity was just a rogue cultivator with no background, and his cultivation was only at the first level of the spirit vein realm. Who wouldn't be jealous of a mobile inheritance with a low cultivation level and no background? Dozens of greedy, covetous, and cold gazes immediately fell on Ling Shiqi's body. Ling Shiqi still had a straight face and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, what is the meaning of this?" A man with white hair but a strong body said, "Suichoyu, as the saying goes, a wise man submits to circumstances. Hand over the inheritance and we can spare your life." Ling Shiqi looked at this person's clothes and guessed that he was from the third-rate force, the Golden Blade Hole. His aura was not weaker than Luo Yi's. It seemed that he was at least a spirit cultivator in the middle stage of the spirit vein realm. However, Ling Shiqi was not afraid at all. He said, "I have the inheritance of the cultivation method." As soon as these words were said, everyone's breathing became heavier. Ling Shiqi continued, "But everyone belongs to different sections. Who should I give it to?" Everyone's expression immediately changed. The person from the Golden Blade Hall who spoke just now shouted, "Humph, Suichoyu, don't try to sow discord. As long as you hand over the inheritance of the cultivation method, you can leave. As for who the cultivation method belongs to, that is not something you need to worry about." That's right, Elder Huashao is right. If you want to live, hand over the inheritance. Suichoyu, you are just a rogue cultivator. If you die, you will die for nothing. I advise you not to resist. Everyone threatened Ling Shiqi one after another, but they were not in a hurry to make a move. Killing Ling Shiqi was easy, but if they forced him to hand over the cultivation method, they had to capture him alive. This was more troublesome. Furthermore, everyone around them could be said to be competitors. If they acted rashly, they might be surrounded by others. If they forced Ling Shiqi to commit suicide, wouldn't they be drawing water with a bamboo basket? Ling Shiqi could not help but sneer in his heart when he saw all these people speaking ill of him and coveting his cultivation technique. This was the way a dignified spirit cultivator's sect acted. Just as he was about to use his trump card to escape, a voice suddenly sounded in his ears. "Suichoyu, I can help you escape. How about you give me the cultivation method after this?" Chapter 250. Ling Shiqi didn't know what method this voice used, but it directly appeared in his ears. Ling Shiqi's first reaction when he heard this sentence was that it was a little familiar. He quickly tried to recall, but he couldn't remember anything at the moment. The voice appeared again. "Suichoyu, you don't have much time left. If they start fighting, even I won't be able to save you." After hearing this voice again, Ling Shiqi finally remembered. He had heard this voice before in Boiwanhu's tomb. This person was a devil cultivator, Su Lu. Ling Shiqi looked around and saw a person in a large black robe. It was the rogue cultivator who held the illusory palace token before entering the illusory spirit's secret realm. At that time, Ling Shiqi felt that there was a familiar aura on his body. Back then, they had fought. Ling Shiqi remembered very clearly that in Boiwanhu's tomb, everyone was played by Su Lu and the other 5 devil cultivators. In the end, he borrowed the power of the devil spirit to escape from their hands. And now, Ling Shiqi was also in the spirit pulse realm. Looking at Su Lu's aura, it seemed that he was in the early stage of the spirit pulse realm. It would have been fine if they did not meet, but since they met by such a coincidence, how could they not trick him? Thus, Ling Shiqi nodded. Everyone thought that he was going to admit defeat and hand over the cultivation technique. Only Su Lu knew that Ling Shiqi had agreed. Su Lu smiled sinisterly. Devil chi rose around his body, and a devil head that was half the height of a person appeared in the devil chi. The devil head opened its mouth wide and spat out endless devil chi. In an instant, all the nearby spirit cultivators were enveloped in the dark devil chi. Who is it? Which devil dares to be so impudent in front of us? It really is him, attack. Suddenly, there was a burst of shouts from the devil chi. Su Lu's voice appeared in Ling Shiqi's ears again. 12 steps to the right, 7 steps forward, and 15 steps to the left to bypass the others and escape the range of the devil chi. Ling Shiqi, who was shrouded in devil chi, had quietly opened his Byakugan. Everything around him could be seen at a glance. At this moment, he sneered. If he really did as Su Lu said, he could indeed leave the range of the devil chi, but he would also run to Su Lu's side. At this time, Su Lu had already picked up the strange weapon with 2 swords connected in reverse. It was obvious that if Ling Shiqi ran over in a panic, he would not have a good ending. However, Ling Shiqi still did it. When Su Lu saw that Ling Shiqi was indeed moving according to his instructions, the corners of his mouth raised into a sinister smile. When Ling Shiqi approached him, Su Lu clenched the weapon in his hand. Devil chi surged on the blade. However, what welcomed him were hundreds of cyan blade lights. When Ling Shiqi approached Su Lu, he suddenly unsheathed his cyan rain blade and instantly released a torrential downpour of blade lights. Su Lu did not expect this result. He was shocked and angry. The strange weapon in his hand spun rapidly, shattering one blade light after another. Although Ling Shiqi's flying rain blade technique did not injure Su Lu, because Su Lu counterattacked, the devil head no longer breathed in and out devil chi. The devil chi in the vicinity was dispersed by the dozens of spirit pulse realm cultivators and completely dissipated in a few breaths. Ling Shiqi's eyes flashed as he shouted, "Everyone, this person actually wants to plot against me and take the cultivation technique for himself. I promise that if you can kill this person, I will take the initiative to hand over the cultivation technique. If I go against it, I, Zhou Qiuyu, will have no descendants and will never be reincarnated." Everyone was already enraged by Su Lu's sneak attack, and when they heard Ling Shiqi's words, they believed him for the time being. Of course, the most important thing was that Ling Shiqi's cultivation was too weak and could not escape from their grasp. Therefore, more than 40 Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators, including a few in the middle stage of the Spirit Pulse Realm, all looked at Su Lu with unfriendly expressions. Su Lu's face was ashen. He originally thought that he had fooled Ling Shiqi, but in the end, he became the target of public criticism. What made Su Lu's heart sink even more was that the 3 Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators from Heavenly Cloud Pavilion stood up and said, "Brothers, this person is called Su Lu. He is an extremely cruel devil cultivator. Half a year ago, he and his accomplices killed our sect's elder Yujinyu, Luo Xiuan of Luo Yu Manor, and Master Lu Leking of Hao Yi sect. They even slaughtered hundreds and thousands of innocent Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators in Shangyang City. This is intolerable. If we join hands to kill this person, it can be considered as upholding justice for the heavens." When Su Lu heard this, he could not help but reveal a look of shock. "Impossible, how do you know so clearly?" When he said this, it was equivalent to admitting it in disguise. Not only him, but even Ling Shiqi was very surprised. Su Lu and the other 4 killed everyone in Buyuan Ho's tomb at the end of the day. How did the news spread? And in such detail. The person from Heavenly Cloud Pavilion sneered, "Humph, the net of heaven has a long arm. You don't know that before Master Lu died, he spread all the news through the array. Not only that, he also imprinted your auras, so no matter where you go, we can track you. So that's how it is." Ling Shiqi and Su Lu both thought so in their hearts. The people from the other sects were also filled with righteous indignation. They all pointed at Su Lu's nose and scolded righteously. "Vicious devil cultivator, you actually killed the Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators of the various sections. You deserve to die. You actually dare to wantonly slaughter ordinary spirit pulse realm cultivators. It's simply unforgivable. Huashao of the Golden Blade Hall shouted with bloodshot eyes, you can even do such a tragic thing. I will definitely chop you into pieces. At first glance, these people looked as if they had a grudge against Su Lu for killing their father. Some of them were indeed targeting Su Lu and the others, but some of them thought that this was an opportunity. Slay demons, eliminate devils, and uphold justice on behalf of the heavens. This was a good opportunity for them to raise their sex reputation. As long as they could kill Su Lu with their own hands and spread the news of what he had done, their reputation would definitely spread far and wide. When Ling Shiqi saw that the situation had suddenly become like this, the people from the Spirit Pulse Realm sects really turned hostile faster than flipping a book. However, he was naturally happy to see it happen. Right now, he didn't even need to make a move, and Su Lu would definitely die. Furthermore, after being interrupted by this matter, it seemed that everyone had almost forgotten about the inheritance of the cultivation technique. However, in the face of everyone's criticism, Su Lu actually laughed strangely. The others thought that he had gone crazy. Su Lu laughed, very good, very good. Lu Luqing actually has such a method. He can be called a formation master. However, do you really think that you can kill me? He then looked at the people from Heavenly Cloud Pavilion and laughed sinisterly, since you can sense me, do you think that I am alone? What? The three people from Heavenly Cloud Pavilion were shocked. Chapter 251. Before Su Lu could finish his sentence, 4 people in the crowd suddenly attacked. The 4 of them unleashed their monstrous demonic chi and attacked the person closest to them. Caught off guard, all of them died here. They were Su Lu's 4 accomplices. Ling Shiqi was shocked when he saw this. These devil cultivators were even stronger than half a year ago. The others were shocked, especially the 4 devil cultivators who were disguised as their fellow disciples. They found it hard to believe that their fellow disciples had been replaced. Ling Shiqi's pupils constricted slightly. He had calculated wrongly, and so had the people from Heavenly Cloud Tower. The 5 devil cultivators were originally inseparable. Since Su Lu had appeared here, the other 4 should be nearby as well. However, Ling Shiqi would never have thought that the other 4 would be able to sneak into the group of spirit cultivators. The people from Heavenly Cloud Tower were the same. They did have a way to sense devil cultivators. However, for a long time, they could only sense that the other party was here, but could not pinpoint who it was. However, they had never thought that what they sensed was not an aura, but a massive aura. The 4 devil cultivators killing people was beyond everyone's expectations. However, everyone present was the mainstay of the various spirit cultivators sects, so they immediately reacted. Huashao from the Golden Blade Hall unsheathed his large blade. Immediately, a golden light shone and an extremely masculine blade intent slashed towards the devil cultivators beside him. Huashao's attack was like a signal. All the spirit cultivators attacked the devil cultivators. Dozens of spirit cultivators at the Spirit Pulse realm attacked at the same time. The scene was not small. All kinds of spirit energy wreaked havoc in the field. Sword chi, blade intent, fist force, and palm shadows flew everywhere. Su Lu and the other 4 devil cultivators used all their strength to merge into one place. Su Lu took out the devil head, while the other 4 took out a portion of the devil corpse. After that, demonic energy coiled around them, and their originally scattered bodies actually started to combine together to form an enormous devil corpse. It was their 5 ghost devil corpse. The 5 ghost devil corpses' aura was tyrannical. It was comparable to a spirit cultivator at the 5th or 6th level of the Spirit Pulse realm. Huashao held his golden blade and his expression became serious. At this moment, someone suddenly shouted, "Look, Suochuyu ran away." What? Everyone, including Su Lu, turned around and saw Zhuqiu running away as fast as he could. The strange thing was that his speed didn't seem fast, but with every step he took, he was able to cover a distance of several feet. In the short span of a few breaths, all that was left of him was a blurry figure. The dozens of spirit cultivator, including Su Lu, were all stunned for a moment. What were all of them here for? Snatching cultivation technique inheritances. But now, the cultivation method inheritance had run away. Even though some of them were tempted and wanted to chase after them, the people of Heavenly Cloud Tower said, "These devil cultivators have killed countless people. We have to make sure that they are punished." The three of them were afraid. They were afraid that the others would chase after the Ling Shiqi. How could the three of them be a match for the 5 demonic cultivators and the 5 demonic corpses? The 4 spirit cultivator sects that had been killed by the devil cultivator also nodded and stayed. Since the demonic cultivator was able to sneak in, it meant that someone had already died in the hands of the demonic cultivator. Now, another person had been killed. In other words, 2 spirit pulse realm cultivators had died in the hands of the demonic cultivator. If they didn't take advantage of this opportunity to kill the demonic cultivator, it would be impossible for them to kill the demonic cultivator by themselves. Huashao hesitated for a moment, but he also resolutely chose to stay. He said, "Everyone from the Jindao sect, stay and kill the demonic cultivator." Most of the people present were willing to stay, but there were also more than 10 people who didn't want to fight to the death with the demonic cultivator. In the end, they didn't have any grudges with the demonic cultivator, so why should they work so hard? It would be better to chase after the Ling Shiqi. If they could obtain the cultivation method inheritance, then they would truly soar. These people immediately chased after the demonic cultivator, no longer caring about the demonic cultivator. Ling Shiqi used the 100 Ghosts Parade and the Floating Feather Spirit Steps to the extreme, and his speed was extremely fast. With his back facing the crowd, he also activated Supercilious Eyes and immediately discovered the dozen or so people chasing after him. Among these people, there was actually a Spirit Pulse Realm cultivator. However, after chasing for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, 6 or 7 of the dozen people gave up because they were too slow. Now, there were only 8 people who were still chasing after Ling Shiqi, and these 8 people all had movement techniques. Ling Shiqi was a little anxious that he couldn't shake off these people for a while. After all, his floating feather spirit steps was not a light body technique. It was actually a waste of spirit energy for him to forcefully use it to travel. If this went on for a long time, the first one to be unable to hold on would definitely be him. However, if he didn't run, he wouldn't be a match for 8 Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators. He could imitate Su Lu and create a large amount of demonic qi, then escape through the ground, but this would be equivalent to exposing his identity. Zhuqiu was not a demonic cultivator. For a moment, he couldn't think of a good way to escape, so he could only stay in this stalemate. Fortunately, the gray spirit energy in Ling Shiqi's body was extraordinary, so he could still hold on for a period of time. After half an hour, 2 of the 8 people gave up. However, the remaining 6 people were slowly closing the gap between them and him. Ling Shiqi's face started to turn pale. Just as he was about to disregard his identity and escape through the ground, an enormous rainbow light suddenly blossomed in the sky to his right. Following this, the entire illusory spirit secret realm shook. Ling Shiqi didn't know what was happening, but the 6 people chasing after him slowed down. If I'm not wrong, that seems to be the direction of the Divine Dream Illusory Palace. The Divine Dream Illusory Palace has already been dug out, so why is there such a commotion? Could it be that another treasure has appeared? Should we go take a look? At this moment, no one said anything. It was only possible that a treasure would appear in the Divine Dream Illusory Palace, but the inheritance of the Divine Dream Palace was right in front of them, so why would they give up what was near and seek what was far away? Ling Shiqi sensed the changes in these people and a thought flashed through his mind. Then, he immediately changed direction and escaped towards the Divine Dream Illusory Palace. With such a loud commotion in the Divine Dream Illusory Palace, it would definitely attract many people. Now that Ling Shiqi's identity was sensitive, it was reasonable to say that he shouldn't go to a place with so many people. Once the news of him obtaining the inheritance spread out, almost everyone would covet his cultivation method. Ling Shiqi naturally hoped that as few people knew about it as possible, but the people chasing after him were the same. Right now, these 6 people had the highest chance of obtaining the cultivation method, but if everyone knew about Ling Shiqi, their chances would be very slim. Not good, he wants to go to the Divine Dream Illusory Palace. Humph, I'll stop him. The person who spoke was a tall middle-aged man in green robes. As soon as his voice fell, his entire body was wrapped in green spirit chi, and his speed suddenly increased by several times. He was the Cool Breeze Valley disciple known for his speed, Ning Yuan. Seeing this, Ling Shiqi's heart sank. Chapter 252. Ning Yuanjing was still hiding his strength. With his eyesight, he immediately saw that Ling Shiqi was forcefully using the movement technique as a light body technique. He definitely wouldn't be able to last long like this. He originally planned to wait for Ling Shiqi to use up most of his spirit force before capturing him. However, he didn't expect the Divine Dream Illusory Palace to happen. He definitely couldn't let Ling Shiqi escape there, so he could only erupt with his fastest speed. Ling Shiqi's heart sank to the bottom. Ning Yuanjing's eruption caught him off guard and disrupted his previous plan. Although he had several ways to escape, they would expose his identity. However, if this continued, it wouldn't be long before Ning Jingyuan caught up to him. Just as he was hesitating whether to expose himself or not, he suddenly saw someone he had paid attention to in the White Eyes range. That person was also rushing towards the Divine Dream Illusory Palace. Most importantly, this person might be able to help him. Ling Shiqi swallowed 2 pills in a row and used all his spirit force to increase his speed. Ning Yuanjing's eyes flashed coldly. He said, "Cui Qiuyu, do you still want to struggle at death's door? Hand over your cultivation method and you won't have to suffer any physical pain." However, Ling Shiqi ignored him and continued to rush forward. Ning Jingyuan fiercely yelled, "What a backbone! I hope you'll still be so stubborn after falling into my hands." The distance between the two was quickly closing. At this moment, Ling Shiqi closed his white eye because he could directly see that person's figure. That person was Lin Hui. Lin Hui was at the 7th level of the Spirit Pulse realm. Of the 6 people chasing Ling Shiqi, 5 were at the early stage of the Spirit Pulse realm, and 1 was at the intermediate stage. If Lin Hui could intervene, he might not be able to defeat the 6 people, but he could definitely stop them. What Ling Shiqi needed to do now was to convince Lin Hui to help him. Ling Shiqi was confident about this because he knew the reason why Lin Hui had entered the illusory spirit's secret realm. Lin Ying's corpse had not even been cold, and it had not even been 7 days since Lin Hui participated in the contest for the Illusory Palace token. This must be a great pain for him. Why did he have to endure such pain and enter the illusory spirit's secret realm? That was because only by entering the secret realm could he increase his strength in a short period of time. He needed to raise his strength at all costs and avenge his son. As for who the enemy was, if Ling Shiqi could guess that it was either the Li Dojo or the Su Dojo, Lin Hui would know even better. However, the masters of the 2 dojos were both at the 6th level of the spiritual pulse realm. Although Lin Hui was at the 7th level, he could not kill his opponents in the arena. He needed to be more powerful, so powerful that he could easily kill someone at the 6th level of the spiritual pulse stage. And Ling Shiqi had what Lin Hui needed the most. The moment Ling Shiqi saw Lin Hui, he shouted, "Brother Lin Hui." Lin Hui, who was rushing towards the Divine Dream Palace, turned his head and saw 2 figures running towards him. His eyes flashed with surprise, and he asked curiously, "You are?" Ling Shiqi quickly said, "Brother Lin, there's no time to say more. I obtained the Divine Dream Palace's technique inheritance by chance, and I'm being chased right now. Brother Lin, help me stop them, and I'm willing to share this supreme technique with you." When Lin Hui heard the words, technique inheritance, his eyes flickered for a moment, but then he became suspicious. Ning Yuan also saw Lin Hui at this moment. He knew that Lin Hui was at the 7th level of the spiritual pulse stage, so his expression changed when he heard Ling Shiqi's words. He pulled out a green spiritual sword and pointed it at Ling Shiqi from afar. Instantly, a dense green sword chi whizzed out and aimed at Ling Shiqi's back. Ling Shiqi turned around, and his hands drew out strands of silver threads. These threads looked soft and fragile, but they were extremely tough. Dozens of silver threads wrapped around the green sword chi as if they were wrapped around a finger, constantly wearing down the power of the sword chi. In a few breaths, the sword chi had completely disappeared. This was the technique that Ling Shiqi had almost never used before, the 1,000 silver thread brushing hands. He had once used it in Lin Ying's room, and was afraid that Lin Hui would notice anything, so he could only use a technique that even he had never used before. Ling Shiqi flashed to Lin Hui's side, and he hurriedly cupped his fists. "Brother Lin, I'm Zhuqiu. As you can see, these spirit cultivators sects never put us rogue cultivators in their eyes. After knowing that I obtained the inheritance, they all came to kill me. I've already shaken off most of them, and only 5 of them are at the early stage of the spiritual pulse stage and 1 at the middle stage. As long as Brother Lin can stop them, I'll hand over the inheritance with both hands, and it can be considered as strengthening the rogue cultivator lineage." Ling Shiqi pointed out the cultivation of the people chasing him, and brought up the grudge between spirit cultivators sects and rogue cultivators. However, Lin Hui still did not speak. He knew that rogue cultivators were not easy, and because of this, he was even more unwilling to offend spirit cultivator sects before taking his revenge. Of course, the most important thing was that he did not completely believe Ling Shiqi's words. Ling Shiqi raised his index finger, and his spirit power moved. Suddenly, a 5-colored stream of light appeared and rotated continuously. "Brother Lin, the cultivation technique cannot lie. You can feel it." This 5-colored stream of light is the same as the 7-colored spirit light in the illusory spirit secret realm. Furthermore, you can choose not to believe my words, but my enemies will not lie to you. Lin Hui saw the 5-colored stream of light on Ling Shiqi's finger and was already 70% convinced. At this time, the 5 people behind Ning Yuan arrived. One of them immediately shouted, "Quickly capture him and interrogate him for the inheritance of the cultivation technique." After Lin Hui heard this, he was 100% convinced. His heart was in turmoil. If he could really obtain the inheritance of the Divine Illusion Palace's cultivation technique, it would be easy to avenge his son. Lin Hui took a few steps forward, faintly protecting Ling Shiqi behind him. Ning Yuan and the other 5 people frowned when they saw this. Ling Shiqi secretly let out a sigh of relief. He had made the right bet this time. As long as Lin Hui was willing to help, things would be much easier. The spirit cultivator at the middle stage of the spiritual pulse stage stepped forward and said, "Bipolar Mountain Stronghold, Qiao Liang. Second-rate force, Bipolar Mountain Stronghold." He did not say much, but these 6 words had a certain degree of deterrence. Ning Yuan said, "Lin Hui, I advise you not to overestimate yourself. This is not something a rogue cultivator like you can participate in." Another person agreed, "That's right. So what if you're at the 7th level of the spiritual pulse stage? Brother Qiao can stop you alone." Lin Hui still did not speak. His hands formed into claws, and a pair of huge claw shadows appeared in front of him. The claw shadows were filled with a sense of sadness. His actions represented his choice. Chapter 253. Qiu Liang and the rest did not expect Lin Hui to attack them. The 6 of them were all from spirit cultivation sects, and Qiu Liang even had the backing of a second-rate force. Lin Hui, a rogue cultivator with no background, dared to attack them. Furthermore, rogue cultivators were usually weaker than those of the same level. So what if Lin Hui was at the 7th level of the spiritual pulse realm? Lin Hui must have gone crazy. In fact, Lin Hui had gone crazy long ago. He had gone crazy the moment he saw Lin Ying die. However, his willpower was unusually strong. He was able to control his hatred and madness, and his strength had increased greatly because of it. Now, Lin Hui only had revenge for his son in his mind. As long as he could get the inheritance, he was willing to do anything. Lin Hui's claw shadow tore through the sky and forced the 6 people to retreat. Then, he turned and ran with Lang Shiqi in the direction of the divine dream illusory palace. He knew that he could not take down the 6 people. His goal was to protect Lang Shiqi, so he quickly thought of an expedient plan, which was to rush to the divine dream illusory palace. As long as they were there, Qiu Liang and the others would not dare to make a scene in front of so many people. Otherwise, they would not be able to get the inheritance. Lang Shiqi followed Lin Hui's footsteps and nodded secretly. Lin Hui's decision was the wisest one. Qiu Liang, Ning Jingyuan, and the rest would not let them go so easily. They all chased after them and attacked them from the sky. Lin Hui blocked most of the attacks, and Lang Shiqi could handle the remaining 2 attacks. With Lin Hui as a strong shield, Qiu Liang and the rest could not do anything to Lang Shiqi. They could only watch as they approached the divine dream illusory palace. After about an hour, a dreamlike palace shrouded in 7-colored light appeared in his field of vision, and many figures could be faintly seen around it. Qiu Liang, Ning Jingyuan, and the rest could only stop and grit their teeth. When they were at the bottom of the cliff, they thought that Lang Shiqi was a cooked duck. But now, this duck had grown wings and flown away. Ning Jingyuan asked with a gloomy face, "Brother Qiu, what should we do now?" Qiu Liang thought for a while and said through gritted teeth, "Let's go there too. Don't make a fuss about it yet, and wait for an opportunity to take him down." However, some people knew that Sui Qiuyu had entered the circle of light. The news will spread very quickly. Qiu Liang said, "Then let's do it before the news spreads. However, we have to agree that if we have the chance, we won't hold back and capture Sui Qiuyu with all our might. After that, we will share the legacy cultivation technique." "All right. Let's do as Brother Qiu says." Everyone nodded in agreement. When Lang Shiqi saw that they were no longer pursuing him, he knew that they had temporarily given up on pursuing him. However, he also knew that this was only temporary. He could be considered to have bought himself a lot of time, and this period of time was the most crucial moment for him to escape. Not long after, Lang Shiqi and Lin Hui arrived at the Divine Dream Illusory Palace. The people of the Mountain Sea sect had already arrived, occupying the most advantageous position in the Divine Dream Illusory Palace. Next to them were the people from the Tang family and the Wu family. Lang Shiqi looked up and saw that the space in the Divine Dream Illusory Palace seemed to be constantly twisting, and there were even hair-thin cracks occasionally appearing. Those were the spatial cracks. Lang Shiqi had seen them before during the Blood Mist Island sky-shattering disaster. Clearly, something had happened inside the Divine Dream Illusory Palace, but he couldn't go in to investigate. At this moment, Lin Hui said, "Sui Qiuyu, you're temporarily safe here. I've already done what I promised you. Where's your reward? If you go back on your word, I'll make the news public, and you'll be doomed in an instant." Lang Shiqi smiled and said, "Don't worry, Brother Lin. Of course, I won't go back on my word. It's just that there are too many people here, and it's inconvenient." Lin Hui's face turned cold. "Don't play such tricks. My patience is limited." Ling Shiqi could only take out a pen and paper from his mustard seed bag and wrote something on it before handing it over. Lin Hui impatiently took it, and after looking at it for a while, his expression became unfriendly. He said softly, "Introductory section." That's right, Ling Shiqi gave him the introductory section of the Divine Dream Spirit Art. It was also the foundation of cultivating the 5 God-flowing light art. He replied, "Brother Lin, to be honest, I did receive the inheritance of the cultivation technique. But right now, I only have the introductory section and the first level of the mental cultivation technique." "Are you lying to me?" Lin Hui's tone turned cold. Ling Shiqi shook his head and said, "No, Brother Lin is in the late stage of the spirit pulse realm. You should be able to see the profoundness of this mental cultivation technique. Just comprehending the introductory section can greatly increase my strength. Otherwise, how could I have the ability to escape from the encirclement of so many spirit cultivators and meet Brother Lin? As the saying goes, rice must be eaten mouthful by mouthful, and the road must be walked step by step. This introductory section is the foundation of cultivating the cultivation technique. I don't think I need to explain the importance of the foundation. But Brother Lin, don't worry. With my guidance, Brother Lin will be able to comprehend this cultivation technique soon. When the time comes, I will hand over the first level of the cultivation technique." Lin Hui did not say anything. Instead, the expression in his eyes changed constantly. He was judging Ling Shiqi's words. After a short while, Lin Hui's palm moved and the paper in his hand was shattered into pieces. Seeing Lin Hui's actions, Ling Shiqi smiled in his heart. He knew that Lin Hui believed him for now. If Lin Hui still wanted the first level of the cultivation technique, he would continue to protect him. In order to show his sincerity, Ling Shiqi whispered into Lin Hui's ear and told him a part of his experience in cultivating the introductory section. Lin Hui nodded his head. Although he was a rogue cultivator, his knowledge was extraordinary. He could tell that the cultivation technique that Ling Shiqi had given him was very profound and difficult to understand. With his aptitude, if there was no one to guide him, it would be difficult for him to even get started. Now that he heard Ling Shiqi talk about his experience and understanding, he was even more convinced that Ling Shiqi was telling the truth. When Qiu Liang, Ning Yuanjing, and the others saw them whispering to each other, they felt as if their hearts were being scratched by a cat's claws. At this moment, the sound of bubbles bursting came from the Divine Dream Illusory Palace, attracting everyone's attention. Ling Shiqi turned around. It turned out that the space in the Divine Dream Illusory Palace was really bursting like bubbles. However, what was revealed after the explosion was not an endless void, but another world. Everyone felt that this was unbelievable. The illusory spirit mystic realm was originally an independent space. Now, it seemed that another space had been created in this mystic realm. The second level of space. What was even more bizarre was that a majestic and pure spiritual energy actually overflowed from that space. Just a single breath was enough to make one's entire body tremble. Chapter 254. Everyone in front of the Divine Dream Palace was pleasantly surprised as they watched the changes. The illusory spirit secret realm had been opened more than a dozen times. As the core of the illusory spirit secret realm, the Divine Dream Palace had been explored countless times. In fact, every single tile and brick had been flipped over by someone. It could be said that not even a single hair was left in the Divine Dream Palace. Therefore, the people who entered the secret realm did not come here. Only a few people did not want to give up and came to try their luck. But no one expected that the Divine Dream Palace would have such a secret realm. Coincidentally, they had run into it. It was truly a stroke of good luck. As long as they waited for a while, when the space stabilized, they could go in and explore. Ling Shiqi said to Lin Hui, "Brother Lin, it seems like our luck is quite good. After we go in, why don't we work together? You get 60% and I get 40%. How about that? Lin Hui was already hanging by Ling Shiqi's first level of the 5-god flowing light technique. Now that Ling Shiqi suggested that they work together, he did not have any objections. As for the split, Lin Hui felt that he was at a disadvantage. But thinking about how Ling Shiqi was able to escape the pursuit of dozens of people, he must be strong. Thus, he agreed. Qiu Liang and the others smiled. To them, this was a glimmer of hope. The Divine Dream Palace was a different world. They could also obtain some opportunities. If they could obtain an inheritance, it would be wonderful. As time passed, the space in the Divine Dream Palace became more and more stable. More and more spirit cultivators arrived. Ling Shiqi scanned the area. There were about 260 people. I remember that there were about 300 people when we entered the secret realm. Looks like some of them are either trapped or have already died. At this moment, he suddenly remembered that there were more than 30 people attacking Su Lu and the other 4 demonic cultivators. He did not know how they were doing. In Ling Shiqi's opinion, no matter how many methods the 5 demonic cultivators had, they would not be a match for 30 Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators. Furthermore, there were Spirit Pulse Realm middle stage cultivators among them. Moreover, he was even more puzzled because he still hadn't sensed Icy Death's aura until now. Now that he was under the watchful eyes of everyone, the spiritual techniques that he could use were greatly restricted, and he couldn't fully display his abilities. It would be great if he could have a helper by his side. Unfortunately, there was still no sign of Bing Shang. Ling Shiqi muttered, "That guy didn't really die in the secret realm, did he?" He didn't see Bing Shang. Instead, he saw a black-clothed woman wearing a black veil. It was the woman who had launched a sneak attack on him when he had just entered the secret realm. When the woman saw Ling Shiqi, she glared viciously at Ling Shiqi, as though she wanted to slice off a piece of his flesh. Ling Shiqi secretly smiled and didn't bother with this woman. This was because at this time, the space within the Divine Dream Illusory Palace had completely stabilized. Everyone's eyes were filled with anticipation and excitement, but they didn't move to enter. That was because the people from the Mountain Sea sect hadn't moved yet. There were a total of 200 people present, and the Mountain Sea sect alone accounted for 50 people. This was a force that couldn't be ignored. If they didn't move, no one dared to move, not even the Tang family and Shiju Wu. Disregarding everything else, the Sky Origin Realm Huang Baixing was sitting outside the secret realm. With the name of the Mountain Sea sect and Huang Baixing by their side, the Mountain Sea sect could do whatever they wanted in this secret realm. They had to admit defeat. The 50 Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators of the Mountain Sea sect were the first to enter the Divine Dream Illusory Palace, followed by the Tang family and Shiju Wu. The order was almost exactly the same as when they entered the Illusory Spirit Secret Realm. The division of strength was so obvious and real. When it was Qiu Liang's turn, they hesitated. If they went in first, what would they do if Ling Shiqi ran away? In the end, these people stayed behind to wait for their fellow sect members. Naturally, the others could see this. Ning Jingyuan whispered, "Brother Qiu, why don't we wait for the others to go in, then we can attack directly." Qiu Liang looked around and found that there were still a few people walking over. He said, "No, with Lin Hui here, we can't act rashly if we can't be sure that we can succeed in one strike. Besides, there are others coming. We'll find an opportunity after we enter." Okay. In the end, there were only a few rogue cultivators left. However, there were only 6 of them, including Ling Shiqi, Lin Hui, and the woman in the black veil. Ling Shiqi looked coldly at Qiu Liang and the others behind him, then walked into the Divine Dream Illusory Palace with Lin Hui. However, when he brushed past the woman in the black veil, she snorted coldly. Lin Hui looked at the two of them thoughtfully, but didn't say anything. When Ling Shiqi walked through the first layer of space, he felt like he was passing through a layer of ripples. After entering the second layer of space, the most obvious feeling he had was that the spirit chi was very dense. The spirit chi here was second only to the spirit spring that Ling Shiqi had experienced. Everyone who entered this place had a feeling of intoxication. If they could cultivate here, they didn't dare to imagine what kind of terrifying speed their cultivation would grow at. In addition to the dense spirit chi, the area of this space was actually not very big. Even a spirit pulse realm cultivator could see the end of it. Chapter 255. In the Divine Dream Illusory Palace, most of the spirit cultivators had already jumped off the high platform. Ling Shiqi and Lin Hui also jumped down together. After landing, Ling Shiqi's feet suddenly made a caw-caw sound, as if he had stepped on something. Not only him, but under Lin Hui's feet, everyone else's feet also made such a sound. For a moment, the caw-caw sound did not stop. Ling Shiqi waved his hand, dispersing the gray fog that had reached his calf, revealing what was hidden underneath. It was actually a skeleton. It was the corpse of a young man who had existed for an unknown period of time. It had already been completely weathered. Ling Shiqi had just stepped on the leg of this skeleton, and that was where the sound came from. But just now, everyone who came down had made such a sound, and these people did not have any pattern, they all fell down randomly. What did this mean? This meant that there were many skeletons buried under the gray fog. Ling Shiqi looked around and found that the gray fog covered an area of 2 to 3 miles. If there were only skeletons under the fog, how many people would have died? As if to confirm his guess, as long as someone casually took 2 steps, there would be a caw-caw sound under their feet. At this time, even he, a person with hands full of blood, could not help but feel a chill down his spine. Ling Shiqi bent down and pulled off the remains of the clothes on the skeleton. These clothes were similar to the clothes of Zhu Xinlu. He should also be a disciple of the Divine Dream Palace. He suddenly recalled the rumor that the Divine Illusion Palace had been destroyed in a single night. Seeing the current scene, Ling Shiqi was more and more convinced that the rumor was true. But how could such a powerful sect be destroyed so suddenly? This was not a third-rate sect like the Golden Wing Academy that could be destroyed so easily. It was like saying that the Mountain Sea sect was destroyed in an instant. No one would believe it. Others would only say that you were crazy. Lin Hui, who was standing beside Ling Shiqi, also frowned. He wasn't the only one. Almost everyone's initial excitement was replaced by a solemn expression. These people were all at the 4th level of the sky human realm. None of those who could cultivate to this level were fools. They could all tell that although the spiritual energy in this place was abnormally dense, it did not look like a good place. At this time, the 50 people of the Mountain Sea sect formed a circle and sent out a palm at the same time. Their palm energy was not very strong, but it set off strong gusts of wind, blowing away most of the gray fog. When everyone saw the countless corpses under the fog, they immediately went into an uproar. A cold air rushed to everyone's head. A young spirit cultivator trembled and said, "WW, what is this place?" Spirit cultivators usually, there were many people's sect, but they rarely killed people. How could they see so many dead people? As far as the eye could see, there were tens of thousands of skeletons. This was only blowing away most of the fog, there was still a part that was not counted. This place was not a paradise, but a graveyard. What happened here? Was the Divine Dream Illusory Palace really destroyed overnight? Is there really a treasure here? There won't be ghosts, right? Countless questions and guesses appeared in everyone's minds, but at this time, the top of the huge stone pillar suddenly bloomed with countless rays of treasure light. It was as if there were countless heavenly treasures, cultivation methods, and spirit weapons emitting the light of treasures. These rays of treasure light instantly dispelled the doubts in everyone's hearts. Their eyes turned red, and they rushed towards the huge stone pillar recklessly. However, the stone pillar did not have any stairs leading to the top, but for Spirit Pulse Realm spirit cultivators, they could already release their spirit chi from their bodies. Their control of spirit chi was very precise. Stepping on the stone pillar was as simple as walking on flat ground. Beside Ling Shiqi, Lin Hui also quickly stepped forward, but Ling Shiqi suddenly pulled him back. Lin Hui turned his head, a faint red light flashing in the corner of his eyes. With a bit of anger on his face, he shouted, "Let go." Ling Shiqi said in a deep voice, "Brother Lin, what did you just see? Didn't you see? That was endless treasure light. There must be many treasures up there." When Ling Shiqi heard this, his expression became serious. This was because he had just felt an invisible wave invade his spirit illusion world, but it was blocked by the spirit illusion world. When he looked up, there was no endless treasure light as Lin Hui had said. Two words immediately appeared in his mind: illusion. The Divine Dream Palace specialized in illusions, but how strong was this illusion that could make over 200 Spirit Pulse Realm spirit cultivators fall for it? Ling Shiqi didn't dare to imagine it. He was also thankful that his spiritual power was strong enough, and he had the spirit illusion world. He also cultivated the 5-God flowing light technique, so his resistance to illusions was extremely high. He was sure that there were no treasures up there, and it was likely that there would be great danger. He glanced sideways and saw that Qiu Liang, Ning Jingyuan, and the others who had chased after him were also rushing towards the giant stone pillar, not caring about the inheritance of his cultivation technique. At this moment, Ling Shiqi was already thinking of retreating. His main purpose in coming to the Divine Dream Palace was to escape. Now that Qiu Liang and the others were unknowingly controlled by the illusion, this was the best time for him to leave. As for the so-called opportunity, was it more important than his life? Scram! Lin Hui suddenly released the spiritual pressure of the 7th level of the Spirit Pulse realm, forcing Ling Shiqi to retreat a few steps, while he himself ran towards the stone pillar. Over 200 people ran over like crazy, and the entire space was filled with the sound of bones being crushed. Hearing this, one's heart turned cold, but no one cared. However, among these people, there were also people like Ling Shiqi who didn't move. For example, Bai Yi. At this moment, he was anxiously pulling back his fellow disciples from the Mountain Sea sept, but none of them paid attention to him. There was also Tang Wanqiu from the Tang family. The difference was that she didn't stop the people from the Tang family, because her eyes were empty, and she stood there in a daze. There was also the woman in the black veil. At this moment, she was forming a seal with both hands, and traces of devil qi were surging around her body. Ling Shiqi's gaze moved between Tang Wanqiu and the woman in the black veil, and his eyes flashed with a cold light. This seemed to be a great opportunity to kill them and steal their treasures. Tang Wanqiu was the genius of the Tang family, so she must have a lot of resources on her. The woman in the black veil had an extraordinary background, so it wouldn't be too late to kill these two people quickly before leaving. Besides Ling Shiqi, only Bai Yi was completely conscious. However, at this moment, he was trying his best to stop his fellow disciples, and some of them were even fighting with him, so he didn't have time to care about this. However, just as Ling Shiqi's killing intent rose, the pendant on his body suddenly fluctuated slightly. Ling Shiqi was slightly surprised. The pendant had a reaction, which meant that Bing Shang was nearby. However, when he looked around, he didn't see anyone, and no one jumped down from the high platform. While he was confused, a sorry figure crawled out from the pile of broken bones. The person looked to be around 30 or 40 years old, with a dark face and no beard, and his expensive clothes were tattered. Ling Shiqi didn't recognize this person, but through the pendant's reaction, he knew that this person was Bing Shang, who had been missing for a long time. Chapter 256. Although Bing Shang's body stood up, he was weak and on the verge of collapse. Ling Shiqi saw that the two women wouldn't be able to escape for a while, so he quickly rushed to Bing Shang's side and handed him a pill. Bing Shang took the pill and swallowed it without hesitation. He murmured, "Thank you. Senior brother Bing Shang, why are you here?" Ling Shiqi clearly saw Bing Shang climb up from the ground and didn't come down with them. So Bing Shang was here ahead of time. Bing Shang took a breath and said, "It's a long story. I accidentally came here." His answer was too vague, but Ling Shiqi didn't delve too much into it. Instead, he told him about his plan. Since Bing Shang appeared, Ling Shiqi naturally couldn't reveal too much of his spiritual technique. He might as well drag him along. Bing Shang looked sideways at Tang Wanqiu and the black-veiled woman. "That's Tang Wanqiu. I let her escape last time. Leave it to me." Ling Shiqi nodded. He walked towards the black-veiled woman with his Qinglin sword. The black-veiled woman wasn't in a daze like Tang Wanqiu. She was awake and was resisting the invasion of the illusion. When she saw Ling Shiqi walk over with ill intentions, her heart sank to the bottom. However, she was still affected by the illusion and couldn't move. Otherwise, she would still fall into the illusion and climb up the giant stone pillar like those people. Although she didn't know what was up there, it definitely wasn't a good idea to use this illusion to lure everyone up. She said in a deep voice, "I know you. Suiqiu, right? There's no deep hatred between us. Why do you have to be so heartless?" Ling Shiqi's expression didn't change. He held the sword hilt as if he didn't hear her. However, just as he was about to attack, there were faint voices coming from the platform. Ling Shiqi immediately recognized one of the voices. It was Hua Zhao's voice. The people who surrounded the demonic cultivator had arrived. And the people who surrounded the demonic cultivator also knew that he had obtained the inheritance of the cultivation method. Ling Shiqi knew that things weren't good. However, they were about to come down. If he was discovered, he would be dead. While thinking, a cloud of demonic qi suddenly appeared around Ling Shiqi and enveloped him and the black-veiled woman. In the dark demonic qi, a blood centipede burrowed into the black-veiled woman's body. And an old voice entered her ears. "If you don't want to die from the centipede, you'd better watch your mouth." As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding devil qi instantly dissipated, revealing an old man in a blue robe. This was Ling Shiqi, who had changed into a human skin mask. The best way was to change Shua's face of the black-veiled woman was to kill. He wanted to kill her to silence her, but he was afraid that this black-veiled woman was not so easy to kill. Moreover, there were already people jumping down from above. He was too late. Thus, Ling Shiqi could only use the centipede curse to control her. The black-veiled woman saw this series of changes. She was extremely shocked. The person who had defeated her before was also a demonic cultivator. That meant that he hadn't used his full strength in the previous battle. The black-veiled woman began to grit her teeth again, almost breaking them. In the blink of an eye, Ling Shiqi had just retracted his demonic qi when the people on the high platform fell down one after another. When Bing Shang saw these people fall, he helplessly retreated and walked to Ling Shiqi's side. He also saw Ling Shiqi's change of identity, but of course, he wouldn't say anything. Hua Xiao and the others were also puzzled after landing. Clearly, the scene here was beyond their imagination. Then, they saw Ling Shiqi and the others. However, they only recognized Tang Wanqiu and Bai Yi. Hua Xiao and the others did not take Ling Shiqi, Bing Shang and the black-veiled woman to heart. In their eyes, it was nothing more than a grudge between rogue cultivators. They could not be bothered to care about it. Tang Wanqiu stood there straight, causing them to be puzzled, and Bai Yi actually killed his fellow sect members, causing them to be even more shocked. However, what shocked them even more was the spirit cultivator that was crazily climbing up the stone pillars. The same thought appeared in their minds. There must be treasures up there. They immediately rushed over, not wanting to be left behind. When they passed by Ling Shiqi and the black-veiled woman, Ling Shiqi stared at the black-veiled woman. When Hu Xiao and the others walked over, the black-veiled woman still did not make a sound. Ling Shiqi secretly heaved a sigh of relief. When they approached the stone pillar, Bai Yi finally noticed them. He hurriedly said, "Everyone, please wait. There's danger up there." Due to Bai Yi's identity, Hu Xiao said a few polite words to him, but he did not stop. However, right at this moment, a strange change occurred in the space. The gray mist that had been sinking to the ground all this time actually soared into the sky, and a terrifying aura of death seeped out. Ling Shiqi was shocked to discover that the gray mist was clearly the aura of death that had accumulated for countless years. The overflowing aura of death instantly condensed into tens of thousands of ghosts that resembled souls. Countless ghost cries resounded throughout the entire space. This phenomenon shocked Ling Shiqi and the others, but the people on the stone pillars continued to climb up with all their might. Perhaps it was because of the appearance of the death aura, but the black-veiled woman was actually able to completely break free from the illusion, and Tang Wanqiu's eyes also lit up. However, the light in her eyes was immediately filled with deep fear. Because the tens of thousands of ghosts were all flying over. Ling Shiqi forcefully suppressed the shock in his heart and forced himself to calm down. He quickly discovered that the path back to the high platform was blocked by countless ghosts. This meant that they had no way to retreat. The miraculous thing was that there were very few ghosts on Bai Yi and Hu Xiao's side. Only a few dozen ghosts floated over. Ling Shiqi immediately shouted to Bing Shang, "Go over there." The two of them no longer cared about the black-veiled woman and ran over. However, the terrible thing was that the skeletons that were originally lying on the ground actually got up and blocked their path. "Scram!" Ling Shiqi shouted. His left hand shone with starlight, and a cold aura spread out. A majestic cold aura surged out, like a river of ice that drowned hundreds of skeletons. In the blink of an eye, the skeletons turned into ice sculptures. Ling Shiqi directly jumped up and stepped on the ice sculptures to quickly run. Bing Shang followed closely behind. When he was about to reach the end of the ice sculptures, he formed a seal with both hands. In an instant, a thick and almost solid pure white ice crystal appeared. These ice crystals continued to spread out and formed an ice path in the blink of an eye. Ling Shiqi was slightly surprised when he saw this because he discovered that the cold aura released by Bing Shang was extremely cold, far stronger than his own. Chapter 257. Although Ling Shiqi was surprised by Bing Shang's cold qi, he didn't have the time to care about it. He quickly jumped to Bai Yi's side. He and Bing Shang cooperated very well. Bing Shang was responsible for using the cold qi to form an ice path, while Ling Shiqi froze all the ghosts that approached into ice. Not long after, the two of them arrived at the stone pillar. For some reason, the ghosts seemed to be very afraid of this place, and not many of them would come over. Bai Yi, Hu Xiao, and the rest looked at Ling Shiqi and Bing Shang strangely. In their impression, Ling Shiqi was very unfamiliar and should be a rogue cultivator. Bing Shang seemed to be from some third-rate power, but they didn't have a deep impression of him. But now it seemed that these two were clearly spirit casters, and they were both spirit casters who cultivated cold qi. As everyone knew, spirit casters weren't very strong before the four realms of heaven and man. Most of them only played a supporting role. But once a spirit caster broke through to the spirit pulse realm, there would be a qualitative change. Spirit pulse realm cultivators could leave their body with spirit qi, so they could add spirit qi to their body, so the power of their spirit technique would increase greatly. Especially when facing invisible ghosts like ghosts, ordinary swords and blades would not be able to injure them at all. Ordinary spirit cultivators could only use 30 to 40% of their strength. But spirit casters could use 100% of their strength and easily kill them. But if they were rare spirit casters, why had they never heard of them before? These two people's identities were very suspicious. However, this wasn't the time for them to think too much. They were also dealing with the ghosts while approaching the stone pillar. Ling Shiqi jumped off the ice path and turned to look. The corner of his eyebrows couldn't help but twitch. Behind him, the black-veiled woman and Tang Wanqiu were also running over on the ice path. The black-veiled woman was surrounded by devil chi flowers, while Tang Wanqiu waved her sword chi to repel the ghosts. So he and Bing Shang were paving the way for the two girls. The two girls jumped off the ice path and seemed to be in a state of shock. The black-veiled woman looked at Ling Shiqi meaningfully. Tang Wanqiu looked at Bing Shang deeply, as if she recognized his identity. But none of them said a word. They were safe for the time being, but the tens of thousands of ghosts surrounded them with death aura, followed by tens of thousands of skeletons. The Ling Shiqi group only had about 20 people in total. Surrounded by countless corpses and ghosts, they were all out of breath. A few of them were so scared that their faces turned pale and their legs went soft. They no longer looked like spirit cultivator of the fourth stage of the heaven realm. Ling Shiqi sensed that the ghosts seemed to be afraid of the stone pillar, but this fear seemed to be fading. Hua Xiao was the most senior and had the highest cultivation among these people. He said, "It seems that these ghosts and corpses won't rush over for a while." His words immediately calmed the others, but his expression grew heavier and heavier. Because what should he do next? Now that there was no way back, they couldn't just stay here and wait to be devoured by thousands of ghosts. One of the people in the crowd said, "Why don't we go up and take a look?" This sentence immediately moved more than half of the people. They were all late and were still thinking about the treasures above. Bai Yi immediately said, "No, you may not know this, but just now, this place invisibly caused everyone to fall into an illusion. After that, they climbed up without caring about anything. I also had the secret treasure of my sex elders, so I didn't fall into the illusion." Hua Xiao and the rest's first reaction was that it was impossible. To cause so many spirit pulse realm cultivators to fall into an illusion in an instant, this matter was inconceivable, but looking at Bai Ye's expression, it didn't seem like he was lying. Hua Xiao turned to look at Tang Wanqiu. In terms of status and background, Tang Wanqiu was second only to Bai Yi. Tang Wanqiu's beautiful face was pale with fright. She said softly, "There was indeed an illusion attack just now. The spirit artifact that the patriarch gave me to defend against illusions almost couldn't block it." Bai Yi from a top force and Tang Wanqiu from a first-rate force had both taken out evidence at the same time. Hua Xiao said, "From the looks of it, there is something on the stone pillar that is deliberately letting us go up." The person beside him said, "Senior brother Hua, but staying here is even more dangerous. If they rush over, we will be torn to pieces in an instant. Why don't we go up and take a look? Maybe there is still a glimmer of hope." "Yes. That's right." A few more people agreed. Ling Shiqi also had a headache at this moment. They were now in a dilemma. Facing countless ghosts and corpses, they would definitely not be able to rush out, but there was an unknown danger on the stone pillar. Once the ghosts and corpses came, they would definitely die. If they went up, they might have a chance of survival. But at this time, the black veil woman said, "Then why don't we climb halfway?" As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was suddenly enlightened. It sounded like a solution. Ling Shiqi sensed that the ghosts and corpses were becoming more and more manic, and could rush over at any time. He made a prompt decision and stepped on the stone pillar. His body was parallel to the ground as he stepped on the pillar and walked up. He used chakra walking jutsu to walk on the stone pillar as easily as walking on the ground. When the others saw this, they also climbed up the stone pillar, but their appearance was not as beautiful as his. Just as they climbed about 100 feet, the ghosts and corpses that originally did not dare to approach rushed over. What they did not expect was that the corpses could actually climb up, and the ghosts directly flew over. This instantly ruined everyone's original plan. Fortunately, the corpses would slide down after climbing for a short distance, but they still swarmed over. Not long after, a small mountain of bones was piled up under the stone pillar. Although the ghosts could fly, it seemed that they could not fly too high. Everyone had no choice but to climb up with all their strength. But even so, there were still hundreds of ghosts flying over. Everyone had to carefully control their spiritual power to prevent themselves from falling down, and at the same time, they had to deal with the ghosts. As a result, some people panicked. In the blink of an eye, a few people fell down. They did not even have time to scream before they were swallowed by countless corpses. Bai Yi held a mountain seal in his hand, and a layer of yellow brilliance covered his whole body. All the ghosts that flew over were turned into ashes. Huashao unceasingly brandished his ferocious saber aura, chopping down one specter after another. Ling Shiqi and Bing Shang were the most relaxed. They did not need to consume too much spiritual power. Cold air surged around them, and if a ghost attacked, it would be directly frozen and then fall down. Chapter 258. As Ling Shiqi and the others climbed higher and higher, the number of ghosts that could attack them decreased. However, the tens of thousands of corpses under the stone pillar unconsciously accumulated into a human ladder, slowly climbing up. Ling Shiqi could not stop. And now, there were only a dozen of them left. The rest had naturally fallen here. As they were forced up by countless ghosts, their climbing speed was very fast, so they gradually caught up to those who had climbed from the beginning. They could even faintly see the end of the stone pillar. After about half an hour, everyone arrived at the top of the stone pillar. However, the 200 people in front were controlled by the illusion technique, while Ling Shiqi and the others were forced to catch up. On top of the stone pillar was a huge circular stone platform. There were many sharp blood-colored pillars around it, and countless complicated arrays were carved on the ground. In the center of the stone platform, there was a person sitting there. To be precise, it was a skeleton sitting there. And what was different about this skeleton was that its bones were actually a faint rainbow color. At this time, someone in the group shouted, "Heavens, Divine Fantasy Spirit Stone." So many Divine Fantasy Spirit Stones. Haha, there's actually a 7th level spirit weapon, that's mine. Cultivation technique. This is actually the most suitable 8th level cultivation technique for me, don't fight with me. Water cloud feather. The best materials for refining, I'm rich, I'm rich. Similar voices rose and fell in the crowd. Seeing this scene, Ling Shiqi knew that they were still immersed in the illusion. Because there was nothing here. And Huashao and the others who came later also had a look of shock and fear. If they had come earlier, they might have been as crazy as those people. However, what was even crazier was that in the crowd, there was a disciple of Shi Ju Wu who suddenly sent out a few palm strikes, injuring several people around him. He even shouted, "You dare to steal my treasure, you're courting death. Scram, the spirit technique is mine. Humph, overestimating yourself, die." The moment he made his move, it was like a chain reaction. One spirit cultivator after another made their move. In the blink of an eye, the 200 spirit cultivators began to kill each other. They were actually killing each other for a treasure that didn't even exist. The battle between more than 200 spirit pulse realm cultivators could be said to be heaven-shaking. Sword energy flashed, palm shadows flew, and waves of violent spirit force spread in all directions. Ling Shiqi and the others couldn't even stand still. People were dying at every moment. Blood splattered and flowed everywhere. Before long, this place was filled with the smell of blood. Bai Yi, Tang Wanqiu, the black-veiled woman, and the others were all dumbfounded. Although they had extraordinary backgrounds, when had they ever seen such a scene? Even an old senior like Hu Xiao widened his eyes slightly. It was obvious that he had been provoked. Many of the people involved in the fierce battle were their fellow disciples, but now they were completely helpless and could only watch helplessly. They couldn't help but feel anxious. Hu Xiao said in a hoarse voice, "Is there any way to wake them up? If this continues, they will all die sooner or later." Ling Shiqi's eyes lit up as he observed his surroundings. Soon, he discovered two strange things. First, these people were clearly fighting in a mess, but no one approached the skeleton at the center of the stone platform. Also, there was a lot of blood flowing out from the fierce battle. The air was filled with a faint smell of blood, but there wasn't much blood on the ground. Thus, Ling Shiqi kept staring at the blood on the ground. Sure enough, he saw the blood slowly seeping into the ground. What was even stranger was that the dead people didn't have any soul power floating out. Ling Shiqi had the passive skill of Hell Curse that could absorb souls, but he couldn't see any remnant souls appear. Is it the array formation here that's absorbing the power of blood and soul? What's the use after absorbing it? Ling Shiqi guessed and looked around, hoping to find some clues. The black-veiled woman pointed and said, "Look, the surrounding pillars seem to be brightening." When Ling Shiqi heard this, he saw that the sharp spear-like pillars around the stone platform were indeed glowing faintly. He clearly remembered that it wasn't like this when they first came up. Was there a connection between the disappearance of the blood and the pillars shining? Hu Xiao directly said, "Let's go destroy those pillars. Maybe that's the foundation of the formation here. After we destroy it, we might be able to wake everyone up." As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed to the nearest sharp pillar. His golden blade swept out, and the sharp golden blade slashed out and chopped the sharp pillar. With a dang sound, there was only a crack on the pillar. Hu Xiao exclaimed, "This thing is actually so hard." He was in the middle stage of the Spirit Pulse realm and he didn't hold back. His full-strength attack only left a crack. However, the more it was like this, the more he felt that the pillar was strange. "Let's try working together." Everyone felt that there was something wrong with the pillar and immediately agreed. Ling Shiqi waved his left hand and a blue circular formation appeared in front of him. A huge sword tip that was as cold as a 10,000-year-old ice cave appeared. Dozens of foot-long pure white icicles condensed around Bing Shang. Bai Yi formed a mountain seal with one hand and a sea seal with the other. He used two completely different powers at the same time. The black-veiled woman used demonic energy to condense a flower half the size of a person. In an instant, dozens of fierce spiritual techniques landed on the pillar. With a loud bang, the sharp pillar finally broke apart. But what was strange was that when the sharp pillar broke, it only let out a scream. They all looked at each other and confirmed that they didn't hear wrong. Could it be that this sharp pillar is alive? Hu Xiao shouted, "Let's try again." After a dozen breaths of time, another pillar broke apart. This time, they clearly heard a voice that was neither human nor ghost. At this moment, there was a sudden change. The remaining dozens of sharp pillars emitted waves of aura. There was resentment, death, injustice, and hatred. Then the blood on the ground disappeared without a trace. The dozens of auras gathered together and formed a huge ball of death aura. The dense death aura caused people to feel a chill all over their bodies. When this ball of death aura appeared, Ling Shiqi and the others immediately gathered together to guard against it. They were now in the same boat and had to hold together. Following that, as long as there was blood flowing out from the crowd, it would be directly absorbed by the ball of death aura. The blood of these spirit cultivators was like their nutrients. Very quickly, the number of spirit cultivators became fewer and fewer. There were only 100 people left, and the ball of death aura actually formed a human figure. Chapter 259. The human-shaped phantoms were emitting all sorts of death and resentment auras. Their bodies did not seem to have any strong spirit chi, and their bodies were slightly distorted, but they gave off a feeling of invincibility. The human-shaped phantom suddenly laughed out loud, "Ha ha ha, I've finally seen the light of day again." The strange thing was that his voice sounded like dozens of people at the same time. At the same time, there were also several different voices. "Kill. Kill. I want to kill. Revenge, I want revenge, Meng Tianzong, I want to kill you. Hate, I hate. Meng Tianzong harmed me." Ling Shiqi thought that the phantoms were the amalgamation of dozens of resentment. It was probably something like a vengeful spirit. Before they died, they must have contained endless resentment, and even after 10,000 years, it was still so strong. Previously, they had used some unknown method to attach themselves to the pillars and silently suck the blood of the spirit cultivators, but Ling Shiqi and the others had destroyed 2 of the pillars, forcing them to come out early. But, who was Meng Tianzong? Bai Yi revealed a look of surprise and said, "Meng Tianzong. Our sect's ancient records say that Meng Tianzong is the founder of the Divine Dream Palace, and also the Great Palace Master." Hearing the words, "Great Palace Master," Ling Shiqi thought of the words that Zhu Xinlu, who had passed down to him, once said, "The Great Palace Master still failed." Since Meng Tianzong was the Great Palace Master he spoke of, and also the founder of the Divine Dream Palace, what did he do to make people hate him so much, and in the end, he still failed? Or, it could be said that it was because he failed that he was hated, and even gave birth to a vengeful spirit after his death. In the end, it came to harm Ling Shiqi and the others. "Haha, quickly become my blood food, become the nourishment of my body, this is your honor. Die, die." The vengeful spirit phantom continued to absorb the blood chi, and their figures became more and more solid, but it became even crazier. He waved his hand and shouted, "Go, go and burn Meng Tianzong's bones to ashes, and let him be consigned to eternal damnation." The 100 or so spirit cultivators who were still fighting, under the control of the vengeful spirit phantom, attacked the skeleton at the same time. It turned out that the skeleton was Meng Tianzong. However, there seemed to be an invisible barrier around Meng Tianzong, which turned all the attacks into nothingness around him. Not only that, his body couldn't even take half a step forward. As for the vengeful spirit phantom, it was still controlling the spirit cultivator S to continuously attack Meng Tianzong, as if it truly hated Meng Tianzong to the core. But all of a sudden, the vengeful spirit looked at Ling Shiqi. At this moment, all the spirit cultivator who had been affected by the illusion technique were attacking Meng Tianzong's skeleton. Only Ling Shiqi and the others were standing at the side foolishly. This was too eye-catching, it was impossible not to notice them. Ling Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. Then, a crazy and eager look appeared on his face. Then, he immediately went into the crowd. Cold chi condensed around him and surged toward Meng Tianzong's corpse. He was pretending that he was also under the illusion. In a moment of desperation, Ling Shiqi thought of this method to make up the numbers. The others weren't stupid either. They quickly reacted to the situation. The first to react was the black-veiled woman. Her eyes moved, and the light in her eyes immediately faded, turning into emptiness. Then, like Ling Shiqi, she crazily rushed toward Meng Tianzong's skeleton. Next were Bing Shang, Hua Xiao, Bai Yi, and the others. Unfortunately, 2 of them were a step too slow. The vengeful spirit phantom immediately noticed the 2 of them. It opened and closed its palms, and the 2 of them suddenly exploded. Countless amounts of blood and flesh flew out, but strangely flew toward the vengeful spirit phantom. The vengeful spirit phantom opened its mouth wide and sucked in the flesh and blood of the two people, revealing a satisfied expression. There are actually 2 fish that escaped the net. Let's treat it as a sumptuous meal. Seeing the vengeful spirit phantom easily kill 2 spirit vein stage spirit cultivators with a wave of its hand, Ling Shiqi's heart sank. If this continued, all the spirit cultivators here would die one by one. In the end, he would also die. I have to help the others get rid of the illusion first. Ling Shiqi had once helped Hua Lingling get rid of the illusion on Blood Mist Island. The method he used was to directly use his mental force to forcefully break the illusion. However, there were more than 100 spirit cultivators here using their spirit techniques. The spirit energy around them was wreaking havoc, so there was no chance for them to get close. Although he had also cultivated a few illusion techniques, he did not know much about how to break them. He could only whisper to the people around him, "Do you have a way to break the illusion?" Just now, Ling Shiqi's method of pretending to be under the illusion could be considered to have indirectly saved the lives of the others. Therefore, the other people's attitude towards Ling Shiqi was extremely good. Hua Xiao answered first, "Sects that practice illusion techniques are extremely rare, and there is not a single one in Donglin County. Therefore, no one has studied how to break the illusion." Bai Yi continued, "The defensive item that the sect gave me can resist the illusion, but I have never heard of a method to break the illusion." The black-veiled woman hesitated for a moment before saying, "I have seen a battle between spirit cultivators who are proficient in illusion techniques. I have only heard of one method from their words." Ling Shiqi looked at the black-veiled woman in surprise. He realized that this woman's knowledge was truly extraordinary. The black-veiled woman continued, "That is to cast another illusion on the victim, and replace the previous illusion with the later illusion. Then, the caster can cancel the illusion. However, I have only heard of this method and cannot guarantee that it will succeed. Furthermore, we do not have any spirit cultivators who are proficient in illusion techniques." A trace of hesitation flashed across Ling Shiqi's eyes, but he immediately sat down cross-legged and said, "I have a way, please protect me." Hearing this, everyone was shocked, including Bing Shang. Bing Shang had seen Ling Shiqi use many kinds of spirit techniques before, but he didn't know that he could use illusion techniques. However, since Ling Shiqi had said so, he must have a way. Bing Shang was the first to stand beside Ling Shiqi and protect him. The others did not hesitate. The best way now was to help everyone remove the illusion and then work together to kill the vengeful spirit. When they were helpless, Ling Shiqi had a way to remove the illusion. At this moment, they could only choose to believe in him. The remaining people immediately formed a circle, protecting Ling Shiqi in the middle and covering his figure. Ling Shiqi closed his eyes and summoned the system. He wanted to level up his newly learned spirit technique, Falling Flowers, to the Great Perfection stage. Chapter 260. Ling Shiqi had cultivated 3 illusions before accepting the inheritance of the Zhuxian school. When he heard the black-veiled woman's words, he thought that one of the illusions might be able to help others dispel the illusions. That was the rank 4 spiritual technique, Falling Flowers. Falling Blossoms was a large-scale illusion. The victim would fall into a boundless and beautiful world of blossoms, while the victim would be at the mercy of others. However, Ling Shiqi had only cultivated this spiritual technique to the beginner level in the room before stopping. This level of cultivation was probably not enough to help many people dispel the illusions at the same time. Therefore, what Ling Shiqi needed to do now was to use his unlimited skill points to raise Falling Flowers to the Great Perfection realm. After a few breaths of time in the outside world, Ling Shiqi suddenly opened his eyes. Soon after, his hand started to form a seal, and his hand shadows started to fly. The black-veiled woman looked at Ling Shiqi with a strange light in her eyes. She knew that the old man in front of her was actually Zhuqiu. Therefore, she was very curious. How could such a rogue cultivator be proficient in sword techniques, blade techniques, spirit techniques, and even illusions? After I get out, I will mobilize the intelligence network and investigate this Wachuyu. The black-veiled woman thought to herself, but suddenly, a petal fell on her shoulder. She focused her eyes and saw that it was a petal as black as ink. It was actually somewhat similar to her nirvana flower. Suddenly, she raised her head as if she had sensed something. She saw black petals falling from the sky like a gorgeous rain of flowers. The black-veiled woman gradually became immersed in the rain of flowers, and the light in her eyes gradually dissipated. Not only the black-veiled woman, but everyone around Ling Shiqi saw the rain of flowers. However, everyone saw a slightly different scene. Tang Wanqiu saw petals of wind that symbolized freedom, Wuxiao saw golden petals that were filled with blade intent, and Bing Shang saw snow that filled the sky. This was the falling blossoms. Only Bai Yi did not fall into Ling Shiqi's illusion. It was obvious that the treasure on his body helped him resist the illusion. A portion of the spirit cultivator who had already been affected by the illusion technique started to calm down. With every breath of time that passed, more and more people started to cultivate. In a few breaths of time, more than half of the spirit cultivators were no longer crazy. Naturally, this scene could not be hidden from the wraith's shadow. He suddenly roared and instantly locked onto Ling Shiqi. How dare you spoil my plans? Die! Just as he was about to tear Ling Shiqi into pieces, Ling Shiqi shouted, "Wake up!" His shout was like a sudden clap of thunder, reverberating in the minds of everyone who had been hit by the falling blossoms. These people woke up in an instant. Where are the treasures? My treasure is gone. How did so many people die? What is that? Those who had regained consciousness were not unaware of what they had done. They were all puzzled. But now was not the time for them to be puzzled. Huoshao circulated his spirit energy and shouted, "There are no treasures here at all. All of you have been affected by the Wraith's illusion technique and are killing each other." Bai Yi said to a person in the crowd, "Senior brother Hebo, senior brothers, quickly come and help me kill the Wraith." Hebo was the leader of the Mountain Sea sect. He was at the 9th level of the Spirit Pulse realm. He naturally believed Bai Ye's words without a doubt. He quickly took a look and discovered that more than 10 spirit cultivators from the Mountain and Sea sect had died. He could not help but be shocked and angry, and immediately gathered the remaining 30 over spirit cultivators from the Mountain and Sea sect to attack the vengeful spirit shadow. The other people who had woken up were not stupid. They quickly understood everything. They looked at the corpses of their fellow sect members and felt a surge of blood qi in their hearts. They were not like the Mountain Sea sect. Losing a few Spirit Pulse realm cultivators was nothing, but to them, it was a serious injury. Immediately, under the lead of the Mountain Sea sect, all the sober people charged towards the Wraith Shadow. The Wraith Shadow did not care about the Ling Shiqi anymore. He shouted ferociously, "Stop them!" Although Ling Shiqi's falling blossoms had awakened more than half of the cultivators, there were still about 40 people trapped in the illusion technique. These people, under the control of the Wraith Shadow, blocked the 100 or so people who were awake. The two groups of people immediately engaged in a chaotic battle. Although the difference in numbers between the two sides was huge, to the sober people, their opponents were all fellow sect members. Of course, they could not kill them. When they fought, their hands and feet were tied. On the other hand, the people who were trapped in the illusion technique all had red eyes. It was as if they had met the enemy who killed their father and were fighting to the death. As a result, the 40 of them were actually able to stop the 100 or so people. At this time, the Wraith Shadow's body was constantly twisting, bulging out one by one. In the blink of an eye, he actually split into a human figure. However, these two figures were smaller than the original and more transparent. One of the two figures looked like an old man with a long beard and the other looked like a square-faced man. The old man's eyes were filled with endless hatred and resentment. He said crazily, "Damn it, you all deserve to die, Meng Tianzong deserves to die even more." Immediately, a surge of death energy surged around him. The death energy turned into countless tentacles and grabbed at Meng Tianzong's skeleton. At this time, the Wraith's shadow still wanted to turn Meng Tianzong into ashes. It could be seen that he really hated him to the extreme. However, when the monstrous death energy approached the skeleton, it quickly melted like snow under the sun. "Meng Tianzong, you're still so selfish even in death. I will make sure you die without a complete corpse." The long-bearded old man attacked relentlessly, while the other square-faced man's vengeful spirit pounced towards Ling Shiqi's side. The square-faced man was filled with anger. If it wasn't for Ling Shiqi's interference, their plan would have succeeded. He had to kill Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi's heart also tightened. He ran into the crowd and said, "Protect me. I can still help the rest break the illusion." Bai Yi and Hua Xiao nodded. They were all adults. It was Ling Shiqi who helped them break free from the illusion. The people who woke up looked at him gratefully. Then, dozens of people helped him block the square-faced man. The square-faced man waved his arms and two python-like death energy swept out. In an instant, the people closest to him were sent flying. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Everyone was shocked. The square-faced man's strength was far beyond their imagination. Even normal spirit aperture realm experts weren't this strong. At this time, he boldly shouted, "Mountain Sea Sect disciples, set up the 10,000 streams to the sea formation." Hualala, more than 30 Mountain Sea Sect disciples quickly gathered. Each of them was shining with a blue and yellow light. These lights reflected each other and gradually merged into one. Finally, they all gathered on Hebo's body. Hebo's spirit energy surged. In an instant, it surpassed the limit of the spirit pulse realm and was still growing. Chapter 261. Under the support of the formation set up by more than 30 Mountain Sea Sect disciples, Hebo's cultivation directly climbed to the middle stage of the spirit aperture realm. Ling Shiqi was also surprised that the Mountain Sea Sect had such a magical formation. Not only was it convenient to use, but the effect was also very obvious. As expected of a top force. Hebo slapped out with his palm, and the shadow of a mini mountain appeared around him. His palm shadow and the mountain shadow merged into one, and his palm actually had the power of Mount Tai. The square-faced man's hands turned into two huge blades and swung down. The blades were silent, but they contained extreme sharpness, and tore apart the mountain-like palm shadow. Hebo and the 30 spirit cultivators behind him suddenly turned pale, but no one was injured. The formation they formed weakened the square-faced man's blade layer by layer, and everyone shared the aftermath, so only their blood and chi were slightly shaken. Hebo and the others were obviously no match for the square-faced man, but they could block him for a short period of time. In addition, the other spirit cultivators were involved, giving Ling Shiqi a lot of time. Ling Shiqi did not stop for a moment and rushed to the group of people who were still fighting. He did not hesitate to use the same trick again, and once again used the falling flowers. Sure enough, after a while, the crazy spirit cultivators stopped. Ling Shiqi saw that the time was right and took the initiative to withdraw the illusion. At this point, everyone finally woke up. Immediately, many people came forward to explain everything. They also understood that they had been controlled by the vengeful spirit, and they were all furious. However, when they saw the old man's earth-shaking methods, they were terrified. At this moment, the space around Meng Tianzong's skeleton was already filled with cracks, as if it would shatter at any time. The old man also realized that everyone had woken up, and there was no more blood chi for him to absorb. He turned his head and did not make any other movements, but the tentacles of death chi that filled the sky gradually pressed down on everyone's heads. The pressure of death made everyone's hearts sink. However, they were all spirit cultivators who had stepped into the four realms of heaven, and none of them were trash. They knew that they could not escape, so they could only fight to the death. Boom boom boom, suddenly, dozens of violent spirit chi emerged, and these people used their trump cards to deal with the death chi tentacles falling down. Ling Shichi looked at the death aura solemnly. The spiritual energy in his body moved, and the demonic beast blood pattern armor instantly covered him, causing his aura to skyrocket. At the same time, wisps of holy silver light seeped out of his body and weaved a silver cloak for him. There was also a pair of holy antlers that were a foot long protruding from his shoulders. This was the beast chi battle pattern that he had obtained after fusing with the rank 3 demonic beast, the holy silver deer. The Saint Silver Deer's beast essence battle runes boosted his speed and holy power. The demonic armor and the silver light perfectly blended together, making the Ling Shichi look like a demon. One tentacle after another attacked Ling Shichi. Ling Shichi executed spirit steps and transformed into a black and white light, dodging the tentacles one after another. However, there were too many tentacles, and no matter how fast he was, he could not dodge all of them. Immediately after, he unsheathed his azure rain blade, and a green full moon rose. The full moon shot out a sharp blade chi, cutting all the tentacles around his waist. He could be considered to be able to withstand it, but there were many who could not. Especially those who were fighting each other before, they had already used up a lot of their spiritual energy, and some were even injured. Under the death chi tentacles, more than 10 people died in the blink of an eye. The tentacles wrapped up the flesh of the corpses and gave it to the long-bearded old man, causing his figure to recover a little. This vengeful spirit was obviously much stronger than the square-faced man, and as long as someone died, it would replenish his blood chi. Unless they could kill it in one blow, the longer this dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for everyone. At this time, Ling Shichi looked at a sharp pillar not far from him in surprise. The sharp pillar was also affected by his full moon light slash, and there were a few cracks on it. He suddenly remembered that it was because they destroyed the 2 sharp pillars that the vengeful spirit was forced out. If he guessed correctly, there should have been many vengeful spirits attached to the sharp pillars. Originally, they planned to slowly absorb the blood chi of the dead cultivators, and then see the light of day again. However, Ling Shichi and the others' actions broke their original plan, and they could only be born in the form of an amalgamation. Therefore, these sharp pillars might be their lifeline. Of course, these were only Ling Shichi's guesses, and whether it was true or not, he still had to test it out. Ling Shichi held the azure rain blade, and in a few flashes, he covered a distance of more than 10 feet. Immediately, the green full moon appeared again, and cut the sharp pillar in half. At the moment when the sharp pillar was cut in half, the square-faced man who was fighting with Ibo and the others suddenly stopped, and then a translucent ghost appeared, wailing and dissipating from the world. The square-faced man's aura suddenly dropped by 30%. Seeing this scene, Ling Shichi knew that he guessed right. He hurriedly said, "Quickly destroy the surrounding sharp pillars, that is where the vengeful spirits are attached to." As Ling Shichi helped everyone get rid of the illusion, his prestige was now very high, and the people near the sharp pillars immediately joined forces to destroy them. In the blink of an eye, another 3 sharp pillars were destroyed. This time, the 2 vengeful spirits were stripped of their resentment at the same time, and their auras weakened. Everyone was pleasantly surprised, so these sharp pillars were the vengeful spirit's weakness. "You dare!" The long-bearded old man roared, but dozens of arms appeared behind him, and so many arms began to form seals at the same time. Then, the entire stone platform began to shake slightly, and the shaking became more and more intense. The surface of the stone platform began to shatter, revealing a dark red light. A pungent smell of blood wafted out. No one knew what was going to happen, and they were all shocked, and hurriedly controlled their bodies. Although they were shocked, they would not foolishly wait for others to use their methods. No one had ever worked together like this before, and these spirit cultivators who were usually fighting with each other tacitly split up to destroy the sharp pillars. In a short period of time, more than a dozen sharp pillars were destroyed. The long-bearded old man and the square-faced man, the two vengeful spirits, shrunk by a large circle, and became more transparent. However, the movements on the stone platform were getting louder and louder. Bang, 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 the tiles on the stone platform exploded, and in a moment, the stone platform had completely changed. There were countless mysterious and complicated grooves on the ground, and a thick layer of black and red blood had solidified in those grooves. And all the grooves and blood finally gathered at the center of the stone platform, where Meng Tianzong was. Ling Shiqi's expression froze. This was clearly an altar. Chapter 262. At this time, the two vengeful spirits were much weaker and they once again merged back into one. Do you see this? This is all my blood, our blood. He opened his mouth, but two voices came out. He both suddenly said, "This seems to be a blood sacrifice array." "You're right." The vengeful spirit actually replied, "This is indeed a blood sacrifice array. If we were to calculate according to rank, it would be a 9th rank array." 9th rank array. These 4 words caused everyone's heart to tremble. Of the spirit cultivators present, 99% of them were from spirit cultivation sects and had some understanding of arrays. Even a Tier 4 array formation was extremely rare to them. As for 9th rank, it was unimaginable. Do you know who that rainbow skeleton sitting in the middle is? He is the peerless genius of the past, the genius that created the divine illusion palace, Meng Tianzong. With these words, other than Ling Shiqi, Bai Yi and a few others, everyone else had a look of disbelief. A powerful expert from 10,000 years ago had actually fallen here. The vengeful spirit continued, "You're all shocked. Then do you know that it was Meng Tianzong who laid down this 10,000 spirit sacrifice array? And the people he sacrificed were all the disciples of the divine illusion palace." Hearing these words, everyone's disbelief turned into shock. Even Ling Shiqi and the others were like this. The founder of the divine illusion palace sacrificed all his disciples? This sounded like a joke, but everyone thought that the divine illusion palace had indeed ceased to exist overnight. Many people were puzzled. How could such a powerful sect be destroyed in such a short period of time? Now that they heard the vengeful spirit's words, if what he said was true and Meng Tianzong sacrificed all the disciples of the divine illusion palace, this explanation seemed to make sense. They then thought of the tens of thousands of skeletons below the high platform. The skeletons did not seem to have any injuries, so they obviously did not die in battle. This confirmed the vengeful spirit's words even more. The more they thought, the more they felt that this was the truth. However, another question surfaced in his mind. Why did Meng Tianzong do this? The organization that he had painstakingly built had been toppled in an instant, and all the disciples that he had nurtured had died. What was his goal? The resentful spirit seemed to see through everyone's doubts. He said, "That's because Meng Tianzong is an extremely selfish person. He didn't have good intentions from the start. Everything he did was for himself. The reason why he created the Divine Dream Palace was to gather a large number of talented disciples. The cultivation methods he passed down were also for the sake of the blood sacrifice. If everyone's cultivation methods were of the same origin as his, they would be able to greatly increase the effects of the blood sacrifice. It's laughable how much we revered him in the past and viewed him as a god. But who would have thought that in his eyes, we were nothing more than blood sacrifices? And his goal was actually to break through to the next level. For his own breakthrough, he sacrificed tens of thousands of innocent souls. Fortunately, the heavens have eyes, and he still failed in the end. Ha ha ha, he still failed, and his soul was scattered. At this point, the vengeful spirit began to laugh maniacally, but everyone was dumbfounded. This shocking secret from tens of thousands of years ago had been revealed in front of them, completely overturning their previous understanding of the world. They couldn't help but look at the seven-colored skeleton in the center of the altar. That was Meng Tianzong, who had sacrificed tens of thousands of disciples in order to break through to the next level. What kind of person was this? For a moment, no one could think of a word to describe him. However, just as they were in a daze, a loud noise suddenly came from the side, pulling them back from their thoughts. Turning their heads, they saw Ling Shiqi's body surrounded by demonic energy, and 18 demonic runes climbed onto his Qinglin sword. Bing Shang forced out 3 drops of blood essence from his fingers and condensed them into a bloodline, which condensed and attached itself to his forehead. Then, dozens of crimson icicles suddenly appeared in front of him. This was the Blood Slaughter 7 Fiend Arts Carnage Blood Slaughter. Ling Shiqi and Bing Shang burst out with all their strength, and the two of them directly shattered a sharp pillar. The story told by the resentful spirit was indeed shocking and exciting, but what did it have to do with them? Moreover, the resentful spirit suddenly stopped and began to tell a story to you. It was obviously stalling for time. However, the others were indeed stunned by the resentful spirit story and didn't react for a moment. Ling Shiqi wasn't from this world, and had no idea what happened tens of thousands of years ago, so he just listened to it as a story. However, he didn't expect that Bing Shang would also attack with him, and use a secret technique like blood carnage. The two of them directly woke everyone up. Among them, He Bo, Bai Yi, Hua Shao, and the others immediately reacted, and at the same time, they couldn't help but feel a little scared. They almost fell for the resentful spirit's stalling trick. The resentful spirit roared in anger, and he glared at Ling Shiqi, emitting a dense killing intent. It's you again. You've ruined my plans time and time again, die. The resentful spirit raised a monstrous amount of death chi, and the entire stone platform surged with death chi, directly sweeping towards Ling Shiqi. He Bo, on the other hand, sent out a few palm strikes. With the support of the array, every palm strike was like a surging wave, setting off waves after waves. After destroying the sharp pillar, the resentful spirit's aura was indeed much weaker, but at this moment, the two resentful spirits had already merged into one. Now that they attacked in anger, their aura shook the heavens. Under the boundless death chi, everything was destroyed, and in a few breaths of time, He Bo's palm power was eliminated. Fortunately, he had the support of the array, and only suffered light injuries. Ling Shiqi's position was originally towards the back, and if the resentful spirit wanted to come over, he would have to pass through most of the spirit cultivators. Those spirit cultivators also subconsciously blocked the death chi. And the resentful spirit's target wasn't them, but Ling Shiqi. Facing the boundless death chi, Ling Shiqi suddenly felt that death was so close to him. At this moment, he no longer dared to hide anything. Immediately, a purple spirit cultivator chi emerged from between his eyebrows, and his aura grew at a terrifying speed. In the blink of an eye, he had reached the late stage of the spirit pulse realm. Then, he stretched out a finger and continuously forced out 10 drops of essence blood from between his fingers. The 10 drops of essence blood instantly condensed into a sparkling bloodline. At the same time, the 18 demonic patterns on Ling Shiqi's blade began to flow, and the demonic patterns intertwined with the bloodline. The demonic patterns merged with the bloodline, and the bloodline merged with the demonic patterns. In 2 breaths of time, the bloodline and demonic patterns no longer existed, and only 3 bloodlines remained. These 3 bloodlines rotated together, forming the shape of 3 tomo, and finally imprinted on Ling Shiqi's forehead. This was Ling Shiqi's nether fiend blood tattoo that was formed by the fusion of carnage blood and demonic patterns. This nether fiend blood tattoo increased Ling Shiqi's strength and mental strength by several times, and his aura was comparable to the spirit aperture realm. Chapter 263. Ling Shiqi used a part of the power that Nine Leaf lent him. Adding on the demonic beast blood-marked armor and the demonic fiend blood mark, his cultivation directly rose to the spirit aperture realm. However, he only had spirit energy comparable to the spirit aperture realm. Even so, it was shocking enough. The series of changes in his body naturally attracted everyone's attention. Everyone who saw him revealed a surprised expression. Everyone was unfamiliar with the identity of Old Man Liu. They had never seen this person before, but he was able to release such a powerful aura. They couldn't help but have some doubts in their hearts while being surprised. Ling Shiqi's body surged with demonic qi, yao qi, blood qi, and holy light. These heterogeneous and even conflicting powers could perfectly coexist in his hands. Just this move alone made by Yi, Bing Shang, and the others, who were praised as geniuses, feel ashamed. As for the black-veiled woman, she wasn't shocked, but scared. She had actually used Ling Shiqi to practice before, and afterwards, she hated him in her heart. Now that she thought about it, how laughable was she? If he really wanted to kill her, she would have died already. However, Ling Shiqi only had eyes for the vengeful spirit. The vengeful spirit rushed over with a monstrous aura of death. The thick aura of death made him smell a trace of death. At this moment, Ling Shiqi didn't open his Byakugan, but closed his eyes. He felt the majestic power in his body and sheathed the azure rain sword. He held the scabbard in one hand and the hilt in the other. He slowly gathered all of his power. All of it condensed on the azure rain sword. From the vengeful spirit's point of view, Ling Shiqi seemed to have given up resisting. He laughed even more ferociously, "Die, become my blood qi." The vengeful spirit raised the aura of death and turned it into a terrifying giant mouth to swallow Ling Shiqi. However, at this moment, a clear saber light flashed and disappeared. That sword light didn't have a berserk sword qi, nor did it have a terrifying aura, but it faintly had the will to split open the heavens. Under this sword, nothing could not be cut. It was as if only this blade of light could exist in this world. The deathly aura that filled the sky dispersed like the clouds parting and the moon shining brightly. The vengeful spirit was still in a pouncing posture, but at this moment, it was strangely frozen in midair. Even the others were stunned. It was as if time had stopped. The vengeful spirit in the air suddenly shrank by a large circle, and its figure became blurry. He muttered, "Impossible, impossible." This was not just the thought of the vengeful spirit, but also the thought of everyone present. At first, Ling Shiqi was only at the first level of the spirit pulse realm, but he had used some kind of secret technique to make his cultivation comparable to the spirit aperture realm. Although everyone was shocked, it was still within an acceptable range. For example, Hebo had relied on the formation to temporarily reach the spirit aperture realm. But Ling Shiqi's blade was completely beyond their imagination. At that moment, there was nothing in their eyes. It was as if there was only this saber in the world. It was hard for them to imagine that a spirit pulse realm cultivator could actually wield such a terrifying and stunning blade. Not to mention a spirit pulse realm cultivator, even a spirit aperture realm cultivator might not be able to do it. Hebo experienced it the most clearly. He knew that with his current state, he could not reach the destructive power of that blade. Pooh! The only sound in the field was Ling Shiqi spitting out a large mouthful of blood. Immediately after, the spirit demon qi on his body disappeared. The spirit demon beast blood rune armor, the beast origin battle rune, and the spirit demon blood rune all disappeared. His spirit demon qi was rapidly weakening. Ling Shiqi half knelt on the ground and used the azure rain saber to support his body. That blade just now, he had finally integrated the sword drawing technique into the full moon swift slash. That blade gathered all the spirit chi in his body, and even his spiritual will. However, he did not explode this power. Instead, he did the opposite and compressed it to the extreme. Only at the moment of the sword drawing technique would it all explode. However, no matter what state he was in, this attack would instantly drain him of all his strength. Therefore, he could only use it once in a battle. He called this blade, the Night-Blooming Epiphyllum. The sound of Ling Shiqi spitting out blood instantly pulled everyone's attention back. They all knew that this was the best opportunity to heavily injure or even destroy the vengeful spirit. They did not have time to be shocked. They all attacked the nearest pillar. Bing Shang stood beside Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi looked at Bing Shang gratefully and swallowed a pill to recover his spirit chi. Then, he took out a pale gold card from the system space. He did not hide it and activated the card with his spirit chi. Immediately, the card shattered. Rays of green light appeared and surrounded Ling Shiqi's body. Streams of energy flowed into his body, rapidly repairing his broken meridians, making his whole body feel warm. This was the prize that he had drawn before, the Healing Touch card. On the other side, when the vengeful spirit saw that everyone was destroying the pillars again, he did not have time to talk to himself. He was about to stop them when his figure suddenly stopped. Because he saw that the barrier around Meng Tianzong's skeleton had disappeared. It was Ling Shiqi's Night-Blooming Epiphyllum that helped him destroy the barrier. Ha 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 ha. The vengeful spirit suddenly laughed. I have to thank you for helping me. When I take Meng Tianzong's body, I will make you wish you were dead. What? Everyone, including Ling Shiqi, was shocked. It turned out that the vengeful spirit's goal had always been to take Meng Tianzong's body. Ling Shiqi also remembered that when the vengeful spirit was split into two not long ago, the long-bearded old man had been attacking Meng Tianzong's skeleton. At first, he thought that the vengeful spirit was too resentful of Meng Tianzong and wanted to turn him into ashes. But now, it seemed that everyone was fooled by the vengeful spirit. He actually wanted to get Meng Tianzong's skeleton. Ling Shiqi also didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The Night-Blooming Epiphyllum that he comprehended severely injured the vengeful spirit, but unexpectedly, it also shattered the invisible barrier around Meng Tianzong's skeleton. That barrier had already been mostly destroyed by the vengeful spirit, and Ling Shiqi had added a stab to it. The vengeful spirit laughed and in the blink of an eye, he got into Meng Tianzong's colorful skeleton. Seeing this scene, everyone held their breath. They didn't know what would happen next, but it definitely wouldn't be good. Crack. Then, the skeleton suddenly made a slight sound. Just this sound alone caused many people to tremble. Then, the seven-colored skeleton's hollow eyes suddenly lit up. But the color in the eyes was different. The right eye was full of death chi, while the left eye was full of seven-colored light. Strangely, the seven-colored light swallowed the death chi in an instant, and the skeleton's eyes turned into seven-colored light. Everyone only heard the vengeful spirit let out an extremely frightened scream before he died. You didn't die. No. Chapter 264. The vengeful spirit had disappeared, it had disappeared very suddenly. But what did it mean before it disappeared? You didn't die. Who didn't die? Everyone looked at the seven-colored eyes of the skeleton, and an unbelievable possibility appeared in their minds. Meng Tianzong didn't die. This expert from 10,000 years ago, the madman who had sacrificed tens of thousands of disciples, didn't die. Ling Shiqi couldn't help but feel his heart beat faster. If this was true, then would they still have a chance to live? Then, Meng Tianzong didn't do anything, but there seemed to be an invisible ripple surging over, and the world suddenly turned white. Endless white. The extreme white covered the entire space, and the tens of thousands of corpses and ghosts under the giant stone platform instantly turned into nothingness. At this moment, everyone's vision turned black, and they lost consciousness. Including Ling Shiqi. However, no one noticed that there was an almost imperceptible seven-colored light that entered Ling Shiqi's body. Following this, several soft sounds came from his body. Counting carefully, there were 9 sounds. But at this time, Ling Shiqi had already lost consciousness. After an unknown amount of time, Ling Shiqi slowly woke up. He felt a splitting headache and nausea, but he endured the pain and got up. He turned around and saw 70 to 80 people lying on the ground. He looked carefully and saw that these were the last people to survive. And he was actually in front of the Divine Dream Illusory Palace. How did we get here? I remember. Ling Shiqi began to think about what happened before, but he felt like countless needles had pierced his mind, causing him to cry out in pain. He clearly remembered that he had entered the Divine Dream Illusory Palace's space, but he couldn't remember what happened inside at all. Whenever he thought about what happened before, his head would ache. Only fragments of images would appear in his mind, but he clearly remembered what happened before he entered the Divine Dream Illusory Palace. What the hell is going on? Ling Shiqi was a little shaken. He calmed his breathing and sank his consciousness into the spiritual fantasy world. What shocked him was that his spiritual illusory world was in a complete mess at this moment. Terrifying cracks could be seen at the edges of the space. The entire space was shaking uneasily. Fortunately, the Heaven Face Soul Crystal was constantly releasing green light to repair the illusion world. Ling Shiqi said in shock, "The spiritual illusion realm is on the verge of collapse. If not for the Heaven Face Soul Crystal, this place would probably have collapsed. What happened after I entered that space?" At this time, Ling Shiqi sensed movement around him and hurriedly exited the illusion world. He turned his head and saw that the surviving spirit cultivators had all stood up. It was just that their eyes were empty. Ling Shiqi swept his gaze around. Whether it was He Bo, Lin Hui, or Bai Yi, Bing Shang, or Spirit Cultivator, they were all lifeless like zombies. He couldn't help but frown. He realized that he was the only one who still had his own consciousness. After a short while, everyone regained their consciousness. Ling Shiqi walked over to Bing Shang. Just as he was about to ask, the conversation of the others made him stop in his tracks. "I didn't expect there to be so many illusory beasts in the Divine Dream Palace. Fortunately, we escaped. Sigh, it's a pity that my senior and junior brothers died in the mouths of the illusory beasts. I don't know how to explain it to the sect when I return." Ling Shiqi was slightly startled when he heard this. He thought to himself, illusory beast. Why don't I remember there being an illusory beast inside? He also heard He Bo's words. That rank 5 illusory beast was too powerful. It was much stronger than ordinary rank 5 demonic beasts. Bai Yi said, "It's all thanks to senior brother he fighting the rank 5 illusory beast without caring about the backlash of the 10,000 streams to the sea formation. Otherwise, it's hard to say if we would have been able to escape." Ling Shiqi was puzzled when he suddenly felt a malicious gaze. He turned his head to meet that gaze. This gaze actually came from the black-veiled woman. Ling Shiqi didn't really care about her malice, but what puzzled him was that he actually sensed the aura of the centipede curse in the black-veiled woman's body. At first, he thought that he had sensed wrongly, but after confirming it repeatedly, he was finally convinced that the centipede curse did exist in the black-veiled woman's body. This meant that he had once used the centipede curse on the black-veiled woman, but he had no impression of it at all. Ling Shiqi began to feel a headache again. He wiped his face to wake himself up, but when his hands touched the beard on his face, he was immediately stunned again. He carefully touched the facial features and skin on his face. Then, he was surprised to find that his current face wasn't Suichuyu's. It was the old man's surnamed Liu. When did I change my identity? Then, Ling Shichi quickly checked the items in the system space and found that a few pills were missing. Furthermore, he was missing a trump card, the healing touch. He quickly looked inside himself and immediately found that more than half of his blood essence was missing. Not only that, even the power that Nine Leaf lent him was gone. Ling Shichi's thoughts raced as he connected the series of changes together. Judging from the situation of my body, I have used the demonic power left behind by Carnage in Nine Leaf. I also used the healing touch to heal my injuries. That means that I have risked my life. However, he couldn't remember who he had risked his life with. Is it the phantom beast that they mentioned? No, I vaguely remember that it was something even more terrifying than a phantom beast. Just as Ling Shichi was thinking, the black-veiled woman walked to his side and whispered, "Suichuyu, right? Let's settle the matter of you injuring me last time." After saying that, she left. Ling Shichi's eyes widened slightly. The black-veiled woman actually called him Suichuyu. However, his current disguise was clearly the old man's surnamed Liu. Seeing the incredible changes in the others, he suddenly thought of a possibility. In order to confirm his thoughts, he deliberately walked past Huashao of the Golden Saber Hall, but Huashao remained indifferent. Ling Shichi clearly remembered what happened before he entered the Divine Dream Illusory Palace. Huashao knew that he had obtained the cultivation method inheritance as Suichuyu. However, when he walked past Huashao, Huashao didn't react at all. This meant that Huashao didn't recognize the current him. This scene completely confirmed Ling Shichi's guess. That was, he had definitely lost part of his memories, and the memories of the others had been altered. Those people's memories of Ling Shichi stopped at the moment when they first saw him after entering the Divine Dream Illusory Palace. Thinking of this, huge waves surged in his heart. What kind of person could tamper with the memories of hundreds of people? However, he didn't have much time to think because at this moment, the secret realm began to collapse. Chapter 265. Suddenly, the entire illusory spirit secret realm trembled without warning. The 7-colored streams of light in the sky twisted and tore apart, and a sinister hole appeared in the space. Inside was a void. What's going on? Not good, the secret realm seems to be about to collapse. Run, run. Although the crowd did not know the reason for the collapse of the secret realm, they knew that the one thing they had to do now was to escape. Immediately, the dozens of spirit cultivators ran towards the entrance of the secret realm like madmen. At the exit of the illusory spirit secret realm, there were 20 people gathered there. These people were from the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. After Oziu obtained the inheritance of the Divine Illusion Palace, the Thousand Illusion Sword sect immediately planned to leave the secret realm. However, they were also worried about one thing. Normally, the illusory spirit secret realm would be open for about 10 days. It was a bit suspicious that they had come out after only 1 or 2 days. Therefore, they simply waited at the exit of the secret realm for a while, planning to leave in a few days. As long as they came out earlier than those who knew that Oziu had obtained the inheritance, they could return to the sect smoothly. Even though they were a top force, this was Donglin County after all. There was nothing wrong with being careful. However, they had only been at the exit for about a day when the secret realm began to collapse. At this moment, the 20 people were both shocked and glad. Without any hesitation, they directly jumped into the exit of the secret realm. Leaving the secret realm was the same as entering the secret realm. They would be teleported to a certain place. The difference was that when they left, they would be near the entrance. Basically, they would be teleported to within a radius of dozens of miles. The disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect all had methods to sense each other, so they could quickly gather together. At the entrance of the secret realm, there were not many people left. 90% of the 100,000 people had already dispersed. Their purpose was to see the glory of the experts from the various sections. The secret realm would be open for about 10 days, so there was no need for them to wait here. At the entrance of the secret realm, there were only people from the various sects and a portion of the spirit cultivators who were selling information. Huang Baixing sat cross-legged with his eyes closed, as if everything in the outside world had nothing to do with him. But all of a sudden, he opened his eyes. He raised his head and saw that the entrance of the secret realm had suddenly begun to shrink violently. Huang Baixing couldn't help but reveal a hint of surprise. However, the entrance to the secret realm shrunk to a narrow slit in the blink of an eye. Huang Baixing took a step forward and formed a seal with his hands. Behind him, a towering mountain that was hundreds of feet tall rose up and covered the sky. Everything within a radius of 10 miles was pitch black. The heavy mountain pressed down on everyone, causing them to be unable to breathe. Some of the spirit cultivator with lower cultivation immediately spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Everyone was scared out of their wits and ran out with all their might. Even an expert at the unity of heaven and man realm would have no choice but to retreat under such might. Huang Baixing stretched out his arms, and the mountain peak trembled, emitting a dazzling light that illuminated the surroundings. He pulled with both hands, as if trying to open the entrance to the mystic realm, but it was to no avail. After a few breaths, the entrance to the secret realm disappeared without a trace in the air. Huang Baixing's face darkened. The sudden change at the entrance to the illusory spirit secret realm meant that a great change had occurred in the illusory spirit secret realm. One had to know that the Mountain Sea sect had 50 Spirit Pulse realm elite disciples. There was even Bai Yi, the most outstanding disciple of the younger generation. At first, he thought that the illusory spirit secret realm was just a good place to train, so most of the disciples sent in were disciples with low cultivation but high potential. But now, there was obviously an unpredictable change in the illusory spirit secret realm. If anything happened to these elite disciples, it would be equivalent to burying the Mountain Sea sect for the next few decades. At this moment, a few figures suddenly appeared in the air more than 10 miles away. They fell to the ground in a sorry state. Huang Baixing had only taken a step forward, and in the blink of an eye, he had arrived here. It turned out that these figures were from the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. Huang Baixing stood in the air and looked down at them from above. He asked in a deep voice, "What happened in the illusory spirit secret realm?" One of the more experienced people immediately recognized him and replied, "Pavilion Master Huang, we are not very sure either. We only know that the illusory spirit secret realm has collapsed." Collapsed? Huang Baixing's face became even gloomier. Dark clouds suddenly covered the sky and a cold wind blew. A sky origin stage expert, even if it was just an emotional fluctuation, could cause the heavens and earth to change color. Following that, within a radius of tens of miles around the secret realm, people would fall out one after another, but they were all from the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. The moment they came out, they saw the terrifying illusion of the mountain in the air. They didn't dare to breathe loudly and could only carefully gather with their fellow sect members. Huang Baixing remained silent. Then, he flew into the air until he was 300 meters in the air, monitoring the area within a radius of 10 miles. After about half a quarter of an hour, two figures appeared. Huang Baixing's expression changed, and he immediately turned into a yellow ray of light and arrived in a flash. These two people were Bai Yi and He Bo. They had just escaped from the secret realm and didn't know where they were, but Huang Baixing's figure suddenly appeared in front of them. When Huang Baixing saw the two of them, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He directly asked, "What happened in the secret realm?" Bai Yi thought for a moment, then replied, "Reporting to Pavilion Master, Everything was normal in the secret realm, but the divine dream illusory palace suddenly burst out with bursts of light, so we planned to go in and investigate. Unexpectedly, there were countless illusory beasts inside, and most of the spirit cultivators who entered died inside. We also relied on the all flows to the sea formation to escape with more than 20 people. In the end, for some reason, the secret realm began to collapse, so we hurried to the exit. When Huang Baixing heard the first half of the sentence, he was puzzled. The divine dream illusory palace had long been excavated, so how could there be countless illusory beasts inside? Why hadn't they appeared before? However, when he heard that the Mountain Sea sect had lost more than half of their disciples, his heart sank. In this secret realm, they had almost no gains, but they had lost more than 20 elite disciples of the Spirit Pulse realm for nothing. First, gather the disciples to follow me back to the sect. This matter needs to be reported to the sect master. Following that, people from the other sects came out one after another, but there were also many sects who waited until the end but didn't see their own people come out. When they learned about the changes in the secret realm, they were all shocked and heartbroken. However, they all knew that after today, Donglin County would not be peaceful. In the distance, there was a plop sound. An old man in a sorry state fell to the ground. He immediately stood up vigilantly and looked around. When he found that there was no one around, he heaved a sigh of relief. This person was Ling Shiqi. He muttered with relief, "I'm finally out." Just as he was about to leave, another 4 people fell down near him. He immediately activated supercilious eyes, and then the corner of his eyebrows raised, revealing a look of surprise. Chapter 266. Ling Shiqi found 4 people through the supercilious eyes, and these 4 people were all related to him. The 4 of them were scattered in 2 directions, with 3 people in 1 direction. They were Su Lu, a devil cultivator, and the black-veiled woman. Seeing that Su Lu was still alive, Ling Shiqi was also very surprised. 2 of the 5 devil cultivators managed to escape from the encirclement of so many spirit cultivators, which was really out of his expectations. However, this also meant that they were difficult to deal with. However, Ling Shiqi could see that the spirit energy in their bodies was very weak, and that many of their meridians were broken. It was obvious that they were seriously injured. Those 2 devil cultivators had always been on Ling Shiqi's blacklist, and now was the best opportunity to get rid of them. In addition, the black-veiled woman had the centipede curse in her body, which might be a breakthrough for him to retrieve his memories. Thus, Ling Shiqi quietly approached her. The black-veiled woman also noticed Su Lu and his companion, and her face immediately revealed a look of pleasant surprise. She pulled out her dagger and coldly snorted, "Humph, I've been tracking you guys for so long, but I didn't expect you to be sent directly to me. The heavens really have eyes." Su Lu and his companion were covered in injuries. After escaping from the encirclement of Huashao and the others, they had planned to find a place to recuperate. However, the sudden collapse of the secret realm caught them off guard. They had no choice but to forcefully mobilize their spirit energy to escape. However, this caused their injuries to worsen, and even their foundations to be injured. If they did not properly recuperate, it would be very difficult for their cultivation to improve in the future. As the saying goes, fortune does not come in pairs, and misfortune does not come alone. They actually met an enemy again. However, they did not know the identity of this black-veiled woman. Su Lu raised his voice and said, "Who are you? We should not know each other, so where did the enmity come from?" The black-veiled woman played with her dagger and slowly approached. She said hatefully, "You slaughtered hundreds of innocent spirit cultivators in Shangyang City. Your crimes are unforgivable." Su Lu and his companion were both shocked. They had thought that this matter was done secretly enough. It was one thing for the Heavenly Cloud Tower and other forces to know, but this woman actually knew. "Who the hell are you?" "Me. I specialize in eliminating people like you who disturb the order of the Imperial Court. Su Lu said in shock, "You are from the Dark Thunder Guards." The black-veiled woman didn't want to answer. "You have too many questions. Go ask them in hell." The black-veiled woman's dagger flew, drawing a sharp black line towards Su Lu and the other man. However, Su Lu said angrily, "You are also a devil cultivator, yet you speak so righteously and sanctimoniously. What demonic cultivators? Cultivation techniques are just tools for cultivation. You have always been controlled by cultivation techniques. You have long lost your humanity." The woman in black shook her head. Black lines appeared on their bodies. Su Lu and the other man were already heavily injured, but they were not willing to wait for death here. Su Lu's body suddenly surged with layers of blood-red light, and his aura quickly recovered. Although he had lost his spiritual energy, he still had his qi in blood. At this moment, he had no choice but to burn his own qi and blood in order to survive. He waved his hand, and the devil's head appeared again. It opened its mouth and swallowed the black thread of the woman in black, but the devil's head let out a silent roar of pain. Then, it turned into a pool of black blood. Su Lu was shocked and angry. This devil's head was a devil he had cultivated for many years, but it was destroyed in the hands of the black-veiled woman. However, he was not stupid. As soon as the devil's head swallowed the black thread, he turned and ran. Junior brother Gong Qin, run separately. The other devil cultivator, Gong Qin, also burned his blood essence and ran in the opposite direction. The black-veiled woman frowned slightly. The speed of the two burning their blood essence was not slow. She couldn't chase them both at the same time. She hesitated for a moment but finally chased after Su Lu. When the three of them left, a figure emerged from the ground. Ling Shiqi's eyes flashed, and he murmured, "I didn't expect that the black-veiled woman was actually a member of the Dark Thunder Guard. It turns out that her purpose of entering the secret land was to hunt down devil cultivators. It seems that the follow-up to Boiwanhu's tomb is definitely not as simple as I thought. Also, Chu Xinran is also a Dark Thunder Guard. Does he have anything to do with the black-veiled woman?" Ling Shiqi remembered that he was recognized by Tang Yuan when he used the raw jade sword. There must be something behind it that he didn't know about. He secretly made up his mind that when he returned to the pavilion, he must inquire about himself carefully. Then, he looked in the direction that the other devil cultivator, Gong Qin, had fled. With a move of his feet, he immediately ran several feet away and chased after him. Gong Qin burned his blood essence and desperately ran forward. The fact that the black-veiled woman did not chase after him made him feel relieved. But all of a sudden, he sensed something and turned his head, only to see an old man chasing after him. And the distance between them was rapidly shrinking. He was horrified. Where did this old man come from? However, a thick and heavy earth wall suddenly rose up in front of him. With a bang, Gong Qin crashed into the wall, but his speed was greatly reduced as a result. Immediately after, he was greeted by dozens of cold sword qi. Under the frosty sword qi, Gong Qin, who was already an arrow at the end of its flight, died tragically. Ling Shiqi walked to Gong Chen's body and picked up the mustard seed bag on his body. Then, with a wave of his hand, flames appeared and burned Gong Qin on the spot. In the end, he was still a little worried, so he sunk the remaining body deep into the ground. Then, he turned around and rushed in the direction of the black-veiled woman. On the other side, although the black-veiled woman's speed was almost the same as Su Lu's, Su Lu was burning his blood essence. He was originally seriously injured, so how could he have so much blood essence to burn? So, as long as he ran out of blood essence, he would not be far from death. Su Lu felt that the blood essence in his body was almost burned out. His face was as pale as a ghost, and his whole body was a little shriveled. But the black-veiled woman was still following behind him like a shadow. "Don't kill me, don't kill me." Sulu finally couldn't hold on any longer. He took the initiative to stop and wailed, "I have a secret, a huge secret, a secret that concerns countless living beings." The black-veiled woman snorted and pointed out a finger. Two streams of pure devil chi pierced through Sulu's legs, completely cutting off any possibility of him escaping. Only then did she ask, "Tell me about it. Since you know that we killed the spirit cultivator of Shangyang City, you should know why we did it. Isn't it for that black fiend demon corpse?" "That's right." "Then do you know that although the black fiend demon corpse was killed by Bo Yuanho's corpse, its demon spirit escaped? If the demon spirit is allowed to recuperate and recover its cultivation, sooner or later, the people will be plunged into misery and suffering. It will only bring an even greater disaster to the Thunderflame dynasty. Don't kill me, I can help you find it." When the black-veiled woman heard this news, she also hesitated. According to the information she received, there was indeed a demon spirit that escaped, but that demon spirit could possess a person's body, so there was no way to investigate. If Sulu could really find the demon spirit and get rid of it, it would be a huge contribution. Seeing that the black-veiled woman was hesitating, Sulu's eyes revealed a hint of joy. But right at this moment, a powerful aura filled with demonic nature suddenly appeared. Sulu and the black-veiled woman looked over at the same time, only to see a figure wearing a sinister devil armor slowly walking over. On the devil armor, there were even streaks of blood light flashing, looking like an evil spirit. This person extended his right arm, and there were 18 demonic patterns flowing on it. He said coldly, "Are you talking about me?" Chapter 267. Ling Shichi was wearing a demonic beast blood rune armor. Demonic chi surrounded his body as he approached step by step. The black-veiled woman's expression froze. Ling Shichi's appearance was beyond her expectations. And from what he said, he seemed to be the demonic spirit. She couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Sulu's eyes were about to pop out. He had never seen Ling Shichi's demonic beast blood rune armor, but he was very familiar with the demonic beast blood rune armor. He recognized the demonic spirit at a glance. But he just said it casually to fight for a chance to live. How did it really attract the demonic spirit? Ling Shichi reached out and grabbed the air. A demonic chi spear condensed in his hand. He shouted coldly, "You destroyed my body. Die!" Then Ling Shichi's body shot out like a cannonball. In the blink of an eye, the tip of the spear pierced through Sulu's heart. He had no power to resist. It was already good enough that he could speak normally. At this moment, he could only stare and lose his life. When Ling Shichi killed Sulu, the black-veiled woman had already escaped on a black stream of light. The moment Ling Shichi attacked, she knew that in her current state, she was no match for Ling Shichi. Whether he was the demonic spirit that Sulu spoke of or not, she only had one thought, and that was to escape. Ling Shichi killed 2 demonic cultivators in a row and was very happy. He pulled off Sulu's mustard seed bag and looked at the black-veiled woman's back. He didn't chase after her, but formed a spirit seal with his hand. Then the black-veiled woman suddenly screamed and her body stopped. Ling Shichi had activated the centipede curse in her body. The bloody centipede was biting her flesh. However, the black-veiled woman was at the spiritual pulse realm. She immediately mobilized her spirit power to suppress the centipede curse. At this time, Ling Shichi had already arrived beside her. The black-veiled woman's eyes were full of shock. She shouted, "When did you do this to me?" She really doesn't know. Ling Shichi thought to himself. The woman clearly had the centipede curse in her body, but neither of them could remember when it had happened. Ling Shichi speculated based on his own behavior. He would only use the centipede curse to control her when she had no room to resist, and he would not kill her. This meant that something must have happened between him and the black-veiled woman. Seeing that Ling Shiqi did not speak, the black-veiled woman continued, "No matter who you are, I am not interested. You are stronger than me, but if you want to kill me, it is wishful thinking." "Really?" Ling Shiqi's hands turned into ghost claws. Demonic chi surged around him, mixed with a bit of baleful aura. A huge phantom of a ghost claw suddenly appeared, and its aura alone made the woman's face turn pale. Earth Fiend Phantom Claw. When the black-veiled woman saw this, she knew that she couldn't be kind. She also made up her mind and said, "You forced me." Ah! Suddenly, the black-veiled woman clenched the dagger tightly and stabbed it deep into her heart. However, the strange thing was that she did not bleed at all. Instead, pure demonic chi surged out crazily. A small flower of darkness appeared between the black-veiled woman's eyebrows. With this small flower as the starting point, a faint layer of demonic flames ignited. The devil flame didn't look very powerful, but in an instant, it burned her entire body. The black-veiled woman screamed miserably, but her aura increased again and again. In the blink of an eye, she reached the mid-stage of the spirit pulse realm. The black-veiled woman moved, and the demonic flames around her body condensed into a demonic flame flower half the height of a person. It met Ling Shiqi's Earth Fiend Phantom Claw. Bang! The huge ghost claw and the demonic flame flower collided, causing demonic chi to fill the sky. The power of the demonic flame flower was terrifying. It was unknown what kind of flame the demonic flame was, but it kept burning the huge ghost claw. In a few breaths, Ling Shiqi's ghost claw was completely devoured. So strong. Ling Shiqi knew that it was not good and retreated. At the same time, he condensed several demonic shields in front of him to block the remaining power of the demonic flame flower. At this time, the black-veiled woman had already turned into a phantom and quickly fled. In the blink of an eye, only a small black dot was left. Ling Shiqi was slightly surprised. The black-veiled woman's speed was actually twice as fast as his. He knew that he could not catch up. This woman's secret technique is much more brilliant than Su Lu's burning of chi and blood. Even in the Dark Thunder Guards, she probably has an extraordinary status. At first, Ling Shiqi was a little worried about letting the tiger return to the mountain, but after thinking about it, it did not seem to be that bad. After all, he was now appearing as the devil spirit, so the black-veiled woman would only report the matter of the devil spirit when she returned to the Dark Thunder Guards. This way, all the spearheads would be pointed at the devil spirit. There were many people in Boiwanhu's tomb who knew about the devil spirit, but whether it was the spirit cultivator sects or rogue cultivators, even Su Lu and the other 5 demonic cultivators were all dead. In this world, the only person left who had seen the devil spirit was Ling Shiqi himself. Thinking of this, Ling Shiqi no longer cared about the black-veiled woman. He cleaned up Su Lu's body and absorbed his remnant soul. The strength of his body had broken through again. It was already comparable to the strength of someone who had just entered the spirit transformation realm. It could be considered a small surprise. Then, he rushed in another direction. At first, 4 people appeared around him, but the last person was still standing in place. It was not that he did not want to move, but that he could not. This person was Lin Hui. At this time, Lin Hui's entire right shoulder, including his right arm, had disappeared. His wound was abnormally smooth, as if it had been cut by an extremely sharp weapon. A large pool of blood flowed under Lin Hui's body. His aura was also very weak. It was obvious that he did not have much time left. However, his eyes flickered with an intense light. It was not the desire to live, but the desire for revenge. He had not taken his revenge, so he could not die yet. At this time, the sound of footsteps was heard. Lin Hui saw an old man walking over. However, Lin Hui did not ask for help. Instead, he said, "You're Zhuqiu." Ling Shiqi's footsteps paused slightly. His current appearance was that of the old man with the surname Liu. He could not help but feel a little surprised when Lin Hui said Zhuqiu's name. What surprised him even more was Lin Hui's second sentence. "You're not Zhuqiu." Ling Shiqi stood in front of Lin Hui. He narrowed his eyes and re-examined Lin Hui. Lin Hui seemed to be much more shrewd than he had imagined. "You're very strange, aren't you?" "That's because I know Zhuqiu," Lin Hui said softly. Ling Shiqi was puzzled. In the information that Feng Shamo had given him, there was no mention of Zhuqiu and Lin Hui knowing each other. "Back then, I wasn't called Lin Hui. Zhuqiu and I were both abandoned disciples of the sect. I knew him very well. That was why I knew your identity was fake when I first saw you." "Then why are you helping me?" Ling Shiqi asked. To be able to make such a perfect disguise and obtain the illusory palace token to enter the illusory spirit secret realm, your true identity is definitely not simple. "I see," Ling Shiqi nodded slightly and said, "You don't have much time left." "Why are you telling me this?" Lin Hui closed his eyes and exhaled. "I know I don't have much time left. I hate that I couldn't kill that bastardly Wan to avenge my son. I'm too ashamed to face him. I have some cultivation resources on me. I wonder if it's enough to ask you to kill Li Wan of the Li Dojo." Ling Shiqi pondered for a moment and said, "Sure." Upon hearing this answer, Lin Hui's eyes suddenly lit up. "I thought you wouldn't agree." Ling Shiqi said, "But not now. We'll talk about it in the future. Thank you." Chapter 268. A day later, the news of the collapse of the illusory spirit secret realm had spread throughout the entire Donglin County and to the surrounding counties at an extremely fast speed. Everyone who heard the news was greatly shocked. A mystic realm collapsed just like that. This collapse was not a big deal, but it had directly buried hundreds of spirit vein realm cultivators. Moreover, 99% of these people were from various spirit cultivation sects. Whether it was a top force like the Mountain Sea sect or a third-rate force like the Heavenly Cloud Building, every Spirit Pulse realm cultivator had spent a lot of resources to cultivate. The difference was that the top forces and first-rate forces could afford to lose them, but the second-rate and third-rate forces could not afford to lose them. This time, the change in the illusory spirit secret realm had caused the annihilation of more than a dozen third-rate forces. For them, this was a serious blow to their bones. Behind this matter, undercurrents began to surge. The division of forces in Donglin County was going to change a lot. The entire Donglin County was suddenly covered in a tense atmosphere. Everyone knew that in the near future, Donglin County would probably not be so peaceful anymore. In addition, in the secret realm, Ozu and Zhuqiu had both obtained the cultivation method inheritance of the Divine Illusion Palace. This matter was also talked about enthusiastically. Basically, everyone was envious of Ozu. After all, he was the pride of the top force, the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. Everyone could only be envious. However, some people had other thoughts about Zhuqiu, a rogue cultivator. Therefore, many people were also inquiring about Zhuqiu's whereabouts. Zhuqiu's original body, Ling Shiqi, was already in a small town. Even here, he could hear the streets full of discussions about the illusory spirit secret realm. This matter had become the matter of the most concern to everyone in Donglin County. However, the more the rumors about what happened in the secret realm spread, the more outrageous it became. There were dozens of different versions flying all over the sky. Ling Shiqi did not care about this. He directly locked himself in the room of the inn. The most important thing for him now was to recuperate and find a way to recover the lost memories. Although the day was short, because he had the Heaven Face Soul Crystal to constantly repair the spiritual illusion world, he could already recall a few scattered scenes. It was a pity that those scenes couldn't be connected at all. It didn't match up at all. However, this was at least a good sign. This meant that as long as he could repair the illusion world, his memories would more or less recover. Of course, this matter could not be rushed. It could only be slowly nurtured. Therefore, his top priority right now was to heal the remaining injuries on his body, and then rush back to the branch pavilion to resolve some of his doubts. But before that, he took out 3 mustard seed bags from his bosom. These 3 bags were Su Lu, Gong Chin, and Lin Hui's mustard seed bags. Ever since he came out of the secret realm and solved the problem, he had left without stopping, afraid that he would be captured and interrogated by the people of the Spirit Cultivator sect. His identity couldn't withstand a detailed investigation and would be exposed if he wasn't careful. Therefore, it was only now that he could calmly check the items in the mustard seed bag. First, he picked up Su Lu's mustard seed bag. With a glance, he saw a large amount of materials inside. They were basically things used to cultivate devil arts, but he couldn't find the corresponding cultivation method. Therefore, these materials were useless and could only be sold to the system. Other than the pills commonly used by Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators, there were a few thin and long golden needles worth mentioning. These golden needles were the ones that Su Lu and the others used to seal the Black Fiend demon corpse in Boiwanhu's tomb. Ling Shiqi carefully examined them and found that these golden needles were actually level 4 spirit tools. Although it didn't have any particularly strong attack power, it had a great restraining effect on evil fiends. Then, he opened Gong Chen's mustard seed bag. The items here were similar to Su Lu's, but there were fewer. Ling Shiqi was a little surprised to find a thick arm. That was the right arm of the 5 ghost demon corpse. Ling Shiqi took out the arm and immediately felt a dense devil chi rush towards him. He immediately exclaimed, "Good stuff. I just don't know how to use it. When we return to the pavilion, I'll find a related cultivation method and try it out." Finally, he picked up Lin Hui's mustard seed bag. Although Lin Hui was the head of a dojo, he was still a rogue cultivator. Therefore, even though he was in the late stage of Spirit Pulse Realm, he had the same amount of resources as Su Lu. Most of the items inside were very common cultivation resources. There was nothing special about them. There were only a few level 2 fish techniques, which could be considered as a part of the expansion of his spiritual skills. The total number of spirit stones from these 3 people was close to 2,000. Adding in the spirit stones he obtained in the secret realm, Ling Shiqi now had more than 5,000 spirit stones. For a Spirit Pulse stage cultivator, this was a huge sum of money. Not to mention early-stage Spirit Pulse realm cultivators, even a sect elder like Huashao might not have such wealth. Spirit stones represented resources. Therefore, Ling Shiqi made up his mind to find a time to turn these spirit stones into useful resources. Other than these, what surprised Ling Shiqi the most was the God Illusion Spirit Stone. These 3 people had a total of 8 God Illusion Spirit Stones. Adding on the one he had, it was enough to exchange for 900 drops of blood from Feng Sha Mo. Ling Shiqi did not plan to hide it because he had already cultivated the 5 God Flowing Light technique. Even with the God Illusion Spirit Stone, he would be able to condense a mystical spirit highland in the future. Speaking of the 5 God Flowing Light technique, Ling Shiqi had only unsealed the first layer and was already comparable to a level 5 cultivation method. He did not dare to imagine what the complete 5 God Flowing Light technique would be. In the end, Ling Shiqi sold all the useless things that he had sorted out to the system. His system coins had already reached more than 1,700 points. With so many system coins, Ling Shiqi had 3 choices. 1 was to do 17 intermediate lottery draws. 2 was to do 1 unlimited lottery draw and 7 intermediate lottery draws. 3 was to continue observing the system store and wait for the items he needed to appear. Thinking of this, Ling Shiqi suddenly remembered that he had not gone to the system store to look at the items. He immediately opened the system store and fixed his gaze on one item, the Reforge card. Reforge card, Reforge spiritual weapon. Can add a secondary Reforge item and 3 types of Reforge materials. Price, 800 system coins. 800 system coins. Ling Shiqi was surprised. This was the first time he had seen something worth 800 system coins. This Reforge card was worth 800 system coins. However, after seeing the description of the Reforge card, he suddenly had an idea and decided to buy it. After clicking on the purchase button, Ling Shiqi's system coins were instantly left with only 900. However, he did not feel the pinch because this Reforge card could solve a huge problem for him. It could also improve his strength. Then, a strange card appeared in Ling Shiqi's hand. He moved it gently and the card disappeared. Instead, a translucent interface appeared in front of him. There was a square in the center of the interface with the words, Primary Reforge, written below it. Next to it was another square with the words, Secondary Reforge, written on it. Below the 2 squares, there were 3 smaller squares with the words, Recasting Materials, written on them. Ling Shiqi thoughtfully took out 2 swords. One was a dark green broken sword, and the other was a raw jade sword. He was quite comfortable with the raw jade sword. It was also a 4th grade upper grade sword. However, this sword was too eye-catching. Even Tang Yuan, who was from a 3rd-rate sect, could recognize that he was Ling Shiqi just by looking at the raw jade sword. The Tang family would definitely know as well. Therefore, he could not use this sword anymore. The reason why he spent so much system coins was to use the Reforge card to change the appearance of the raw jade sword. Ling Shiqi picked up the 2 swords and hesitated. He was hesitating whether to use the dark green broken sword as the primary Reforge item or the raw jade sword as the primary Reforge item. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.